The work session of the Annapolis City Council for Thursday, May 22nd, 2025 will be called to order at 2:04. At this time, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, so before we start on our nearly 70 amendments, then we cut it back. So I'm going to try to keep the presentation on each one into around 3 minutes, and we'll still be here after 5. But clearly, looking forward to this information and all these amendments. I'm sure they're going to be great additions. So, Mr. City Attorney, please present us the first item on the agenda.
First item on the agenda is ID 725, the City Council work session to discuss budget amendments.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to you guys.
Good afternoon, Brittany Moran, Finance Director. And I'm just going to start it off with you all have the amendment list in front of you. And a couple points I want to make before we start off the conversation is just the totals that we're looking at. If you look under the one-time reserve, I want to call out that with all amendments as is, we're looking at a total of 1.98 million additions, and we have 1.429 available. So just some food for thought as you continue through your conversations. Additionally, for the capital impact, there is 1 million available to add in the capital reserve, from the capital reserve. And I will just caution that these totals that you're looking at and kind of your max ceilings are the total balance of those accounts. So utilizing all of that would wipe those balances clean for the next year. And then, Jake, do you want to add anything before? Okay.
For the record, Jake Trudeau, Budget Manager. The amendment number 1. This amendment moves the harbor master from the Department of...
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Alderman Savage.
Just sorry, I didn't quite get the first part of what you said. You said the total of what's on this list is what line?
1.98, correct.
Oh, I see. Okay. And then the total we have available, and that's for one-time use. The total
Correct.
Available in one-time use. Where's the total available?
The total available is 1.4, in addition to what is already in the proposed budget.
Okay, so that's the balance not yet committed to fiscal year 26. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
Okay. I thought we had like your last presentation, 4.5 million one-time use.
Yes, that was including the anticipation of the current fiscal year that we're in. So balance to balance, what's physically available at the moment is that 1.4. And then going forward at the close of FY25, any additional savings from 25 would be for next year's carry forward budget.
All right, I'm not entirely sure I understand. Okay.
If I can try restating that, I believe this is the known balance as of right now. We are anticipating some additional monies to come in there at the end of the fiscal year, but I think the caution from finance is that extra amount that you had referenced is an estimate only, and so we do have to be cautious to what extent we go beyond this number. This number is solid and is available. There will be some amount in addition to that, but that's dependent upon where we end this fiscal year, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much extra will fall into that one-time balance at the end of this fiscal year. Is that fair?
Yes, audited available.
So the 1.4 audited and available, but again, but the 4.5 was estimated,
Correct.
but this sounds like this will change depending on end of the fiscal year. But this is current as of this date, or is it
Yes.
as
With all of the amendments that have happened year to date, and then the close of 24.
Mhm.
And then we also net out what was appropriated for the current fiscal year. So anything that's not used in the one time that was already appropriated would also be added back.
Mhm. Okay. I mean, so are you saying that we're going to need to narrow this down, our 1.9 million, to be 1.4, or you're saying it kind of still depends based on how we end up closing out the fiscal year based on our estimations?
It's advisable to narrow it down to the 1.4 or find another funding source, or a reduction somewhere else. However,
Yeah.
I just caution appropriating funds that are not truly there yet.
You're just running
Yeah.
the risk that they
Well,
wouldn't.
I'm just trying to compare in my head, because so what did we do last year and the year before as far as one-time use? Were we operating off of that estimated amount, or were we operating off of this? Because it worked out previous few fiscal years. Do we need to do anything different? And I'm just trying to figure out.
In previous years, you didn't fully maximize what you had available to spend,
Right, we left some of the one-time use.
right? We had a
We
much
voted
healthier,
down
much healthier
Ross's-
balance and really have hit it hard the past couple of years. So that 4.5 that you're referencing that might be in your memory is the projected 25 fund balance.
Yeah.
We then would take the 3 million that we already have programmed in for 26 out of that 4.5, which leaves us to a little bit less than 1.5.
Alderman Huntley?
Thank you. I have a somewhat similar question, but sort of on the other side of things. Could you explain, when we were talking about the total number of capital reserve funds programmed in here, and I believe you said that's 245, and the amount available in the capital reserve fund is 1 million. But it sounded like you were saying before, so we were going over. Is that? I guess I'm trying to understand the impact between the capital reserve fund impact and the capital fund impact. Could you explain the distinction between those and to what extent it's appropriate to add those together?
I believe the capital fund impact column all the way to the right would better be stated as bond impact. If you add the total of the two, it's either or, whether you fund the capital project with a reserve or if you use bond funding is to be determined, but net together.
That
So
makes
there
total
is
sense.
available in the capital reserve, excluding bonds, 1 million. Whether you use all of that to take up all the new capital projects or you put some towards bond funding would be up to you guys.
Excellent.
Finance director is correct. That title didn't get carried down on the second page,
Yeah.
just in that section. So it is the bond impact only.
Thank you. I see it now on page 1. I appreciate it. And I'd just say, right, we can go below 1.4. We don't have to spend all 1.4.
That would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Right.
Mr.
I mean,
Mayor.
to your point too, we have tapped into that one-time balance throughout the year too for unanticipated expenses. So it is advisable to not fully expend that fund. Can I proceed?
Can I add one more?
Good, we're 10
comment?
minutes in and we haven't done the first one yet.
I just want to add one more comment on that as well, is that in the previous year, we've added a large chunk of money into that reserve, but that dollar amount is not expected to continue in the future years. So you may have been used to having that $4 million at the beginning of the budget to utilize as that one time, but that's because we've had a healthy fund balance at the end of the year. We're not looking at that same $4 million to replenish the fund at the rate that it's being spent.
Thank you.
All right. Amendment number 1. This amendment moves the harbor master from the Department of Recreation and Parks to the Office of the City Manager. This is in line with our charter. Amendment number 2, this amendment reduces the transfer to capital projects fund for PAYGO amount of $4,227,100 by $6,530, which is reflected in the capital book, within the finance not allocated to reflect the amount of PAYGO deappropriated in the maintenance facility project. That's a technical amendment. Number 3, this amendment adds $200,000 to the police department for signing bonuses using the reserve for one-time uses.
Could I get you to move them as you?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Number 4, this amendment adds $10,900 to the CDBG block. I'm sorry, the CDBG Community Development Block Grant. This reflects the final award from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Number 5,
So could you go a little slower? It's well, I'm trying to
Yep, no worries. Yeah.
type notes here and figure out.
I think so. Back to amendment number 4, Alderman Savage. Which one?
I'm just still like time to think about some of these. So I was
Maybe
still
we'll go a
stuck
little
on
bit slower.
$200,000 on APD signing bonus.
would you like to go back to that one?
So these are all in addition to what was proposed in the budget, right?
That's correct.
Can I add a comment on that, just that one in particular for the signing bonus? That was just of the 400 that was appropriated in FY25. We know that 200 of that is going to be needing to reappropriate so we can expend it, but it's not in addition to the 400 that was already set aside in FY25.
Amendment number 5. This amendment adds $25,000 to the finance department for additional training using the reserve for one-time uses. Amendment number 6. This amendment adds $15,000 to the finance department to digitize records using the reserve for one-time uses. Amendment number 7. This amendment changes the project description for the Tolson Street Park and traffic safety improvement projects. This amendment modifies the changes from prior year section for the Taylor Avenue traffic improvements project. It also changes the project image of the Tolson Street Park project. These changes came from our engineers. The project pages and how they're modified are following this amendment.
Can I just check in with Alderwoman O'Neill on that? Anything? Oh, okay.
Thank you. I know that it's just textual changes. And I guess I'm a little bit confused because I thought that in years past, we talked about them and moved each one. Is that not how we're doing it?
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Huntley.
On the Tolson Street one, I just know this was an error in the initial draft of the budget, that there wasn't anything there before. It was all incorrect, if I remember correctly. If we look in the budget book, I think Tolson Street Park it wasn't Tolson Street Park. So this is just adding that.
Correct.
Okay. There's been a 2-part phase on Tolson Street Park. It was named a street park in FY23, I believe. And then there's an addition to it that there's phase 2. So maybe that's where the confusion is.
Any answers to that? Alderman Savage?
I don't have an answer to that.
Nope. Okay. Questions?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get settled in here with framing in my head how to handle all this. And I guess, if we have supporting information we'd like to request, it'd be a good time to, what I'm thinking I'm just to do for my text amendments and other changes, just to give a description. I know we're trying to prevent getting into too many details or debates. So I guess as far as like the police signing bonus, and I don't need it now, but if I could get a justification and full explanation of that amendment, since it is a significant amount of money, so that we can adequately discuss it at the proper time.
Thank you.
Alderwoman O'Neill, would you like these? Would you like us to connect you with DPW, or DPW wants to comment on the amendments for these three?
I will take a look at the CIP project list. Thank you. Can we just clarify what our process is today? We're going to read through the whole list and then talk about the ones that we have questions on, or are we supposed to be asking questions as we're going along?
In the past, so we try and, if you have questions, yes, we need to talk about them so we can finalize these amendments today, or very, very soon, definitely prior to the second. Obviously, we don't want to get into a debate, but we want ample time to be able to explain the purpose of these amendments, what they're actually doing, so that everyone understands what they're doing.
Thank you. I think our biggest hesitation, and I'm going to speak for Alderman Savage, is that this is really the first time we've had a chance to look at them as of like 3 hours ago. So trying to digest them all as we're going so quickly. So I appreciate you slowing down.
And we've got directors here to bring forward if you have any questions. Alderman Savage.
Well, if that's the case, then could police come and just provide, so we can frame it in our heads, explain the signing bonus?
I can probably jump in for that one. That was
Okay.
more of a technical change from our end. We had $400,000 that was set aside one-time use in FY25. We know that that full amount is not going to be spent in 25 based on the number of officers that were hired. So there is still 200,000 or 10 officer positions that were not hired in that pool of money. So it's just moving the funding from it would default back to fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. So it's reappropriating what's left in for 26.
All right. So there's
Captain Miguez, do you want to just the genesis of where the signing bonus comes
Maybe
from?
the podium. I mean, probably easier if you're all going to come up. Yeah.
going back.
Captain Amy Miguez with Annapolis Police Department. The signing bonus for entry-level hires is something that has been asked for many years. Last year was the first year it was funded. So my understanding is this is just a technical amendment to make sure the money from last year is moved forward into this year. We have a certain number of officers that were hired. The money is dispersed over time, so it's not dispersed immediately. And finance has been putting money aside as we hire so that it'll be there as that officer continues in their career.
Perfect. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain. Thank you.
Amendment number 8. This amendment increases the design cost and reduces the construction costs from the previous year for the Northwest Street Park project by $50,000. The fiscal impact is $0. So shown on the project page, previously there was $50,000 in design in prior approved appropriations and $50,000 in construction. And we've changed this per the engineers to put $100,000 in design. Amendment number 9. This amendment creates a sustainable mobility fund. This amendment will be completed for the June 2nd, 2025 vote. All parties involved in this effort will be meeting on May 28th to finalize it.
Alderman Savage.
Can you just explain what that means? I think presumably this is the mobility fund that we set up in the outdoor dining
Correct.
legislation.
Yep.
So just can you explain what this step?
We would need
is-
to add the funding to the actual legislation, the budget legislation. So we would
Okay.
modify most likely Appendix C
That's
For
what.
that.
So it's cost neutral. That's what
and,
you're
and the
just
ordinance, correct?
setting up the
Yes.
process. Okay. Thank you.
Amendment number 10. This amendment updates the status of the project and reallocates funding between planning, design, and city overhead for the Eastport flood mitigation project and reduces the project by $60,000. It also moves the FY27 through the FY29 grants from approved to pending. The city was not awarded the Army Corps and the FEMA FY23 grant. The total project cost decreased from 5.9 million to 5.7 million. And the revised page follows. Amendment number 11. This amendment adds $200,000 to elections for the 2025 municipal election using the reserve for one-time uses.
Alderman Huntley, then Alderman Pendle Charles.
Can we just get an explanation for why this additional 200,000 is necessary?
Sure, if there's someone from law here that wants to comment on elections, our understanding is, go ahead.
Do you
Sure,
want me to-
go ahead.
So there was some legislation that was passed at the state this year. And Carrie, did you want to jump in?
No, go right on ahead.
Okay. There was
Is there a
some
lawyer here?
legislation passed at the state this year. We have traditionally had an agreement with the county to utilize the county's election machines and to help with the administration of the election. The state legislation that passed clarified that those machines are actually owned and controlled by the state board of elections, and that therefore the agreements need to be with that state board. We have had those machines and access to them essentially free of charge up to now. That will no longer continue. And so the elections, that isn't the only thing that's in here, but it is a big piece of what's in here is the cost of those extra machines and some of the consequences of that change in the relationship as a result of that state legislation.
Alderman Savage.
Sorry, I didn't catch that one part of it. What did the legislation say that now requires us to pay for extra machines?
What it did was it meant that our agreement is no longer with the county because the county isn't the one who actually owns those machines. It's the state. And so the agreement to use those machines actually has to be made with the state.
And they're charging us
And
more as opposed to the county wasn't?
correct. There'll be some charges, and previously we didn't have.
Have we?
And Mr. Lyles, you might have additional information about that. I don't know. That's having been part of the back and forth with the state around that legislation, so they would have an idea of what our impact was. That's my recollection of that back and forth, so that they were aware that's what that would do to us.
You're correct. We still don't know the actual charges yet. We haven't even gotten the basic terms of the new MOU from the state, so we're just kind of waiting. So the number that we're putting in front of you is based on really a rough order of magnitude based on what we think, but it could be more.
Okay, well, so that passed this last session. It's the effective date. I'm just a bit surprised that they're having this take effect when we're in the middle of an election. And I mean, I think we should talk to our delegation because this is kind of a big deal to have to put this on us the last minute, I think. But
Hey,
well, if the
we got
county
up to the highest ever. Come on.
if the county wasn't doing it, I don't know why the state would need to.
I think
Just-
we are the first jurisdiction to really get affected by that. And so the state legislative office had specifically reached out to us to make sure they got information about what that was going to mean for us. So I think a lot of the information that was tied to that legislation about potential impacts was a reflection of city impact.
And I would add too that I think the one of the considerations was the fact that the state may be trying to drive everybody to the state election period to draw down costs even further. We're one of the few jurisdictions that has an off-state election. Some jurisdictions are making those decisions. Some jurisdictions are making those decisions, so they don't have to come up with the additional funds.
But my wife's not watching.
All right, amendment number 12. This amendment corrects the spelling for the body-worn camera grant. Amendment number 13. This amendment reorganizes the line of authority of the Office of Law and Elections from the Mayor's Office to the Office of the City Manager.
Sorry. Never mind.
We are now getting into the Finance Committee amendments. Alderman Huntley, if you want, I'll read the italicized portion. If you want to add anything, please do. Amendment number 14 eliminates the constituent services equity part-time position in the mayor's office and reallocates $36,600 to contingency and non-allocated.
I'll just say on this one that that position is currently unfilled, but mainly I wanted to go back to the last one just to say that there's some debate about, I think the position of the city attorney was we theoretically could change the line of authority for the Office of Law within the budget, but that it contravenes our charter, and so it wouldn't do anything unless we changed the charter. So that's why there's only 2 of the 3 members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Trudeau.
Amendment number 15. This amendment eliminates a council associate position in the Office of Law and reallocates $100,000 to contingency and non-allocated.
Alderman Savage.
Excuse me. So it would just, what's the contingency?
It's in non-allocated. That's the account that if something comes up like a snowstorm, we use the funds out of contingency to pay for something that's unexpected throughout the year.
So just when you do see that, it just in short means that the funding is being proposed as a cut, but not repurposed anywhere else.
Yeah.
Amendment number 16. This amendment eliminates the leaf blower program in the Office of the City Manager and reduces the reserve for one-time uses by $105,000. Amendment number 17. This amendment reallocates community grants, decreases the total by $2,000, and increases contingency by that cut of $2,000. Following the verbiage on this one is the updated community grants listing as proposed by the Finance Committee. Amendment number 18. This amendment reallocates $250,000 the Adopted Community Grant Program and $100,000 for Downtown Ambassadors Program in the Police Department using turnover.
Mr. Trudeau, do you maybe want to explain that turnover part as we discussed it? Or I can, if you want.
So this one is just the total department funding is not changing. It's just adding this expense within that department.
And maybe explain the pay for.
I'm sorry, what was the
Pay for? Like why is, okay, I can say it. So what the reasoning here is the understanding that the police department is not fully staffed. And so taking into account that it is likely that they will not fully spend the budget that is allocated, and that recognizing that is what is providing the savings that is funding this amount. That's what I was trying to say.
Alderman Savage and Alderman Annette.
So this moves the adopt community to APD out of, where is it now? Mayor's
So what we're
office?
doing technically in this amendment is cutting the salaries and benefits line and moving that entire program down to supplies and others, which has that special projects line in it. So we're just, the total for APD doesn't change, but it reallocates the fund in between those budgeted categories.
But who's administering it?
EPD.
Currently,
with
no
what
one.
staff?
I'm sorry?
With what staff?
So the intention was to add, so of that 200,000, and we'll better explain this in the italicized portion, 50,000 of that is for a position.
Full time or contractual?
Alderman Huntley, do you want to explain your, or Alderwoman Finlayson?
Alderman Finlayson.
I don't, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we delineated. We would leave that to APD to decide whether it's a full-time or a part-time. But may I also add, I thought we had also talked about using the 100,000 from one-time funds for this year, contingency. But if not necessary, then we should leave it the way it is.
If you as a finance committee would like to change that, you just please let us know.
My understanding was that we wanted to find a source of funds that was recurring. And so that's why we tried to stay away from that $100,000, Alderwoman Finlayson.
If I might respond, the only reason we were considering it is there was a shortfall in the department and they couldn't pick up that 100,000.
I think it also just, there's a question of whether it's one time or it's reoccurring. And just to note that if it is added to the operation budget, the way it's presented now is that's going to continue to carry forward as a baseline, and along with the positions that are also included in that department.
Because I think it started off as one-time use.
Yeah.
It's basically, okay.
Alderman Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I agree because this program, in my mind, is proved its worth, but it can't continue to be funded by one-time money. My question is about the downtown ambassadors. What is that again, and why is it under police?
Sure. May I? So Downtown Ambassadors is also a successful program. It was previously funded through a grant directly to the Downtown Annapolis Partnership to from the state. And the ambassadors served in a variety of roles, including helping visitors and helping ensure that there wasn't overly aggressive panhandlers, hawkers, also just reporting out issues, things like, hey, this light is out, and happy to get you some of those stats on how that worked before. I will note, though, that my intention with this is for these funds to be competitively awarded, right? It would not necessarily, to be competitively awarded, meaning it would not necessarily have to go to the Downtown Annapolis Partnership. The police department should choose who is
That's
most
my
appropriate.
question is, I mean, police is short staffed and
Ross, can you put your microphone closer?
yeah, the police are short staffed and it does seem like this is maybe more consistent with the ombudsman or some of this more broadly representative of city overall, but I guess we'll discuss that when we vote on it.
Sure, and we can do that. I guess if I may just briefly respond, the intention is sort of for it to work as a police auxiliary in a way.
Safety officers, and it's been successful so far. We're thinking it's the people we all see on our parades and a pretty cast of characters that everybody knows. Alderman Savage?
Yeah, I get the intention as far as auxiliary. I'm not exactly clear as far as if this is going to be like a recurring auxiliary kind of competitive money, wouldn't that trigger some kind of competitive bid? to put this out to contract? And if it's a grant, you're saying grant money, shouldn't that go through the community program? And I'm just a little confused about the
No, that's a
mechanism
fair
here.
point. I wouldn't say that we here need to determine if it is a grant or a contract. And of course, if it is a contract, we would follow the city's procurement laws. My intention is to just say that this is not specifically earmarked to one organization. That's what I'm trying to say.
And when we get to it, my questions are going to be how many of these organizations are already taking grants from the community grant as well as the adopter community. So I see some duplication in my view. Thank you.
Amendment number 19. This amendment adds $166,300 to the police department for a sergeant to administer 5 additional speed cameras and increases fines and forfeitures revenue by that same dollar amount.
Alderman Arnett.
Thank you. So I'm trying to figure out how we come up with 166,300. I mean, is that an estimate of how much the additional cameras will generate in fines and forfeitures?
We took the conservative approach. That's the dollar amount to fund the sergeant position. Revenues are anticipated to be more than that, but we don't, at this point, we don't know, when that program's going to take off. We were just trying to capture the true expense of that position.
Alderman
Thank you.
Savage.
Yeah, we discussed a little bit before the meeting, but some latest information. But state General Assembly did pass legislation that clarified that, changed it so that a sworn officer is no longer needed to administer or at least sign off on the ticket portion of this program. And so I get at the time, I think when the Finance Committee put this together, that I don't think that was known. So my point is, I don't think a new sworn officer is needed. That, as we stated in our meeting, that police department's not going to be able to fill even if they wanted to. So I don't know what is the Finance Committee aware and revisiting this, or
Yeah. I think I'm absolutely okay with revisiting it. This was something that even in the Finance Committee, we didn't have it fully finalized when the finance report, the budget report came out. And so ultimately the goal here is to say, give the police department the resources that they need to get these speed cameras in by the end of the year, and that recognizing that it will generate revenue for us. My sense, though, is in agreement with you, Alderman Savage, that it does not need to be a sergeant to administer. It's about what does it take to do the installation. So I think this is something that we might need to keep working on before next Tuesday, Monday, the 2nd.
I will add that there's no expense for the actual cameras itself. I talked to our vendor just to confirm that we don't have any upfront cost. We get revenue. They don't take out their cost until we start producing revenue. So it's a net until we recoup it from violations.
Thank you.
I will just say on Amendment 19, we did work with the police department to come up with that dollar amount. So my advisement is to work with them while you're trying to finalize this one. Amendment number 20. This amendment adds $100,000 to the Office of Integrated Technology Solutions for an additional contract service assistance using the reserve for one-time uses. This is to help out the fire department. And we will
Alderman Arnett,
update.
Alderman
We'll
Savage.
update that language to be more specific in the italicized.
Yeah, that would, I mean, certainly I use at least $100,000 of IT services alone, but it would be nice to know what the additional money is going for.
Absolutely, we'll make that change.
Thank you, Alderman Savage and Alderman Gay. Got your hand up, Alderman Gay? No.
so I just want to know more about the nature of this position. Is it going to be, you said contractual, how did you put it? Contract services assistance, but again, I'm a little wary of our past and continued practice of adding contractual positions where if they work over 40 or 35 hours for our purposes a week, then they have to automatically get converted into full-time positions after 5 years. And that's not only per our policy, but per state law.
Correct.
Since they have to get retirement at that point.
This
So what's the intention, to have this be a part-time contractual services or contractual services with a company?
correct with the company.
Okay.
We'll make this better language. It'll be consulting services. So true contractual services, not a contract position. Thank you.
Alderman Gay, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious what technology or infrastructure improvements are they making within the fire department that this is necessary?
Anyone from fire department here?
Yeah.
Please come forward and
Have the
you,
fire
Chief.
chief and IT come on up to address that if you guys want.
Doug Romali, Fire Chief. I'll just start by saying that we have multiple IT programs that we've initiated. And right now, I've got firefighters and I've got battalion chiefs that are taking time out of their duties to try to be IT specialists. It's just not working for us. Some of these programs tied to our fire reporting system. It ties to everything that IT is doing because it ties into the GIS system. It's our mobile data terminals that we use. We're 24-hour operation. If the terminals go down, we have connection problems. There's all kinds of ongoing concerns there. We've changed over our reporting system and our RMS system all around to go along with what's happening with the payroll system and integrating everything together. So right now, ITS, and Brian can talk more on that, while they support us, they just don't have the support for everyday operations for us, and that's where this is. That's why we figured starting this out, at least looking at it as some sort of contract, either position or contract services, was the way to go, to see once we move on in the future if it needs to be a full-time assigned to us or however that is. But this will be coming out of ITS, so it'll be basically working for ITS, and they'll be directing them to our operations in the fire department. Brian?
I actually don't have a lot to add to that. That summarizes pretty much everything that I was going to say. Alderman, do you have anything else, any further detail that you'd like from me, sir?
No, I appreciate that. I am curious, though, if the thought is at some point, would this be a full-time position? Then why not just create an additional full-time position in ITS? If the need is there, I mean, all departments have expressed a desire to have additional assistance in that area, and so I'm wondering if it's not worth it now to make it full-time, or are you comfortable going through the contractual service way for a year and then doing the full-time?
May I actually answer on why the finance committee chose to structure it this way? And then if you have additional things to jump in. The reason the finance committee, and Alderwoman O'Neill, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you were the first to bring this up. The reason we chose to structure it this way was because we heard about a discrete project from fire that they needed to get over the finish line, which was the records management system. And so in addition to, I think, like you're saying, Alderman Gay, a lot of departments could use additional IT support, and fire maybe top among them as in a broad category. What we heard from the fire department was that they were 75% of the way through this record management system change, and they needed some additional help to get over the finish line. So that was why we did contractual.
Yeah, and to answer your other question, Alderman Gay, I'm perfectly comfortable with it, and going about it this way is not without precedent. We have a contractual or employment agreement position at the police department that started with contractual services through a placement agency. So that's been successful. So my comfort level with this is fine.
The other piece of context from my perspective is that IT is interested in doing some strategic planning this next year. And so I would just speaking for myself, I would like to see us get to the other side of that to look at the long-term need writ large, which would include the needs in fire and other departments as well, to look at what that personnel complement should really look like. There's a gap here now. Let's go ahead and fill that now, but filling it on a contractual basis, pending getting to the other side of that strategic planning makes sense to me.
100% agree.
Thank you.
Amendment number 21. This amendment transfers $165,900 within the Department of Public Works Engineering and Construction Division from contractual services to salaries and benefits. It funds a program manager and 15 position.
Alderman Savage.
What are the impacts on public works? It's going to reduce their contract services. Is this going to impact? Is that coming from like snow removal money?
Nope, it's within ENC, so it's just moving from contractual services to salaries and benefits to get a full-time position in there. Last year, if you remember, council approved to put contractual funds in there to assist with moving projects along. Contractually, that they weren't able to fill that position, so the hope is to get some movement this way. Amendment number 22. This amendment decreases the tree program within the Watershed Restoration Fund by $80,000. It also reduces the watershed restoration fee increase from 15% to 12% over 2025 rates.
Alderman Savage.
Just to emphasize this, thank you, a bit more. So because of the CDOC project and a large amount of mitigation that had to be paid into our critical area reforestation fund, we're able to use some of that to help reduce the watershed fund increase by basically repurposing it for tree planting, but just in a different fund, essentially.
Thank you.
Amendment number 23. This amendment repurposes $32,000 for football and sports officials in the Department of Recreation and Parks Sports Division, and to reallocate those funds to partner with a nonprofit after-school sports program. These are one-time funds, and they are not to be recurring in 27.
Anybody here from Parks and Rec? No. Nope. Alderman Savage, then.
So redirects the money to an after-school program. Is that another grant program, or is that something that is going to be spent on another rec and parks? I'm not clear on what exactly it's getting transferred to.
So originally the one-time funds were there for the Annapolis football program, and the intent is to repurpose those funds not go to the football program, but rather funding to a nonprofit for after schools program.
Well, this doesn't indicate one-time use on the chart.
I'm just adding a note that originally those funds were put in the 26 budget as one time. So what we're redoing is repurposing the funds. That's what the amendment is doing, is repurposing the funds in 26.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'm still not sure. Like, does that? I'm still not sure who's going to run that after-school program.
So if the finance committee wants to comment on this, our understanding that it was a nonprofit, it wasn't decided in the meeting potentially who, but if you want to add context, please.
I would say I think Alderwoman O'Neill initially brought this forward, so she might be able to add more context than I could.
Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you. Yes, I had actually indicated a specific nonprofit who is already running after school sports programs in our city schools. But then I was told by my finance committee colleagues that we shouldn't actually name a specific one, and that it should be perhaps a bidding process for a nonprofit to take over that programming. It was really important to me that especially after all of the testimony we had from local sports organizations, that they're pretty much covering football in Annapolis, and adding a football program from Parks and Rec would work to make playing fields more competitive and harder to get, that taking sports programs to where the children already are without worrying about transportation made more sense, and it could expand it to more children that would possibly have a transportation issue. So taking it to the schools. open to the decision as far as which nonprofit. But there are at least 2 nonprofits that are currently operating in our schools offering after-school programs based on sports.
Thank you. Alderman Arnett and then Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do definitely remember all the testimony from Play Annapolis and specifically from the football program. But at the Finance Committee, I also remember testimony from the Parks and Recs director saying that she was looking at establishing programs that would include all kids, not just athletically competitive kids. So I guess I'm wondering, I think I would like to hear from the director, because this, if I'm reading this correctly, it comes out of that program and goes into a nonprofit group. I don't see this as an either or. I'd like to see it as both, but I think it would be good to hear more from the director about, and this is reducing Parks and Rec's budget, and I'd like to hear from her.
Not here today. No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, not. She's not here today, but I will get her to circle back round with you.
And I've made a note to include that topic within the special session that's coming up.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. I just shared the similar concern of the alderman. I obviously want to see the sports continue, and I do share your concern that there should be some management from Parks and Recs in collaboration with the schools. But I think we need to hear from the director, as well as loop back to some of the Play Annapolis things that they said that they were discussing, and we will have them in Housing and Human Welfare on the 29th. Parks and Rec had already been doing, and so some of the amendments born out of that may be premature. I'm just curious. It's also below $50,000, so it doesn't have to be put out for bid. I'm curious what 2 nonprofit organizations that you had in mind.
I think we're not allowed to talk about that. Alderman Gay, we're not allowed to name people specifically, but I think we all know.
Well, if it's being,
I will get the Parks and Rec director to communicate with you both directly too. I'm sorry, I apologize that she's not here.
No, that's fine, and that just brings up the point that you made earlier again in redundancy and funding to nonprofits, where we have $400,000 in community grants to $250,000 in adopted community grants, and then individual amendments where nonprofits are receiving funds. So, I'd like to follow up on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Anybody else? Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think part of our discussion about taking out a specific name had to do with empowering the director to make a decision as to whom we would be partnering with. And so we would use and rely on the professional knowledge of our staff to make a decision about how to address them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Savage on 3 minutes.
Well, I guess that we may just want to think about how we handle grants in the city. If we want to pick specific groups, which I think on the one hand, would probably be inclined to. We already have an established group we know is out there. Why not just move this money to a community grant program and do it that way? Because otherwise, the department's going to have to set up some kind of, if it's competitive, some kind of grant application process, review process. If it's getting put out to bid, that's also more staff burden. It just seems like it might be easier just to do community grant. I mean, we've done it before with groups. We do it all the time. We do it with stuff like the Film Fest. And anyway, just throwing it out there. I agree with the concept.
Thank you. All right, next one, please.
Amendment number 24. This amendment decreases the cost for the Acton Cove project by $200,000. the Pip Moyer restroom upgrade project by $100,000, and the traffic signal rehab project by $200,000, and then repurposes those funds and increases the cost of the general sidewalks project by $500,000. It also modifies the changes from the prior year section for the Acton Cove and general sidewalk projects.
May I explain this one?
Alderman Huntley.
So I just want to explain because there's distinct reasons for the cuts on each one of these. So Acton Cove Waterfront Park, I care a lot about getting it fixed, but the significant, we had planned to have this money in here, but the mayor's proposed budget had a little over $300,000 more than was planned. And the difference for that was to use a more durable bulkhead material. But I had some concerns about frankly, the aesthetics of that material. And so if we're going back to something more like what we have now, but redoing it, it would cost less. So that's where the $200,000 comes from that. On the Pip Moyer restroom upgrade, it just seemed like it was a lot of money to upgrade restrooms. I think we all support the goal here of making gender neutral private restrooms, but $300,000 was a huge amount of money to do that. So we decreased it down $200,000. And then on the traffic signal rehabilitation, this was an area that I spoke with the director about, and he felt that they had ample in reserve from previous years. And so they were not going to be able to fully expend the amount that had originally been budgeted for this. So I forget now off the top of my head if it was $100,000 or $200,000 came out of that. That was the reasoning behind all those.
Thank you.
Amendment number 25 reallocates $50,000 in the Department of Planning and Zoning for the Annapolis Maritime Apprenticeship Program partnership using turnover from the vacant Economic Development Manager position in Planning and Zoning.
Thank you. Alderman Ned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I strongly support this initiative by Alderman Schallenmeyer, but I have two questions. One, this is not one-time only money, but it looks like money that is a one-time only fix, but also just as much as I support maritime apprenticeships, I support economic development, and I'm wondering if we could hear from the Director of Planning and Zoning, because I think we really do need to be also doing more development for our economic, attracting people in the city, and I'd hate to see that suffer, even though I do agree with this initiative.
Richard Jakubiak.
So those initiatives are very much part of the economic development program for the city and won't be compromised by this reallocation. We actually think this is a great use of funds that are not allocated right now because the position has not been refilled yet. And the position will be refilled soon. I have the applications in my bag right now that will get an interview in the coming weeks.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
But before the
Alderman
director,
Huntley.
sorry. So yeah, I actually have almost the same question as Alderman Arnett. I'm confused how, if the position is going to be filled in sometime in FY25, how are we able to use turnover funds from FY26 here? Right. We're going to have it. Say we're going to hire this person in the next 2 months, then we'll have a full FY26 of that economic development manager being there. So how did
That's true. I don't know the machinations of this particular change or how it affects the budget, but
okay. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Maybe it's more a question for the Director of Finance.
Yep, I think so.
Yes,
unspent funds, right? Sorry.
I had the same question, that it's funds that are not going to be there reoccurring if it's turnover, but it's a reoccurring expense. So to me, the funding source is not that.
And it's
depending on the nature of the expense that's being added, the 50,000, if that truly is a one-time, then it might be better suited in one time. But if it's not, then there needs to be a different funding source other than a vacancy that will not be there
Okay. Thank you.
My
We can-
point to the director was we want both. So, so next year we're going to have to figure out how we get both the apprenticeship and also other economic development in the city. I think it's critically important, but this seems to work for now. I think we have the float in the salary that will take care of us immediately, but in the future we're going to have to get, I think, both of these in the budget for planning and zoning.
You, Alderman Pendle-Charles and Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if the Economic Development Manager, once that position is filled, Director, would they be overseeing the Annapolis Maritime Apprenticeship Program? If that's the case, then would it be prudent to wait until we hire the person to find out exactly if that's within their scope of duties?
The program is affiliated with the county, and the county administers the program. This would be the city's share of that program funding. So it can continue without having a manager from the city. Hope Stewart, who's essentially acting city manager now, supports this. Or excuse me, city manager. Sorry, Vicky. Acting economic development manager, and so she's engaged with it now and very much involved in doing the oversight from the city standpoint on this.
Thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Gay.
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Next, please.
Amendment number 26. This amendment adds $40,000 to the city council for a Sheila M. Finlayson and Ross H. Arnett City of Annapolis Scholarship Program using the reserve for one-time uses.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Gay.
Thank you. This is my amendment I'm proud to introduce. First, the city doesn't have a scholarship program for graduating high school seniors or students in college. And I think it's critically important that we establish that to support, secondary education goals. And I couldn't think of a better way to do so than to honor the two longest serving older people in the city's history, a city that's 250 years old. And they've given so much to this council. And so I'm excited to introduce this and hopefully we get it across the line.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
I think this is a great idea. Commend the alderman for having this idea. And I would just suggest maybe conversation maybe amongst those who are being honored, but it might be nice to focus this scholarship even more on perhaps those who are looking to get into public service of some kind. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. All right. Next. Thank you.
Amendment number 27. This reallocates $100,000 to the Office of the City Manager to add a program specialist using 2 months of turnover and eliminating a council associate position in the Office of Law. If Amendment 15 passes, this amendment cannot move forward as funding for this position would already have been cut.
Alderman Savage.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, just to clarify, it would conflict with one of the Finance Committee amendments. But so anyway, just to explain my intent with this is it would reallocate that money to a different type of position. This position would focus on legislative implementation, and so it would, because I know we have had a documented issue sometimes with shortfall with legislation not being properly implemented and kind of disseminated to the departments. And so I think this would help to add a position to the city manager's office that would help to keep track of that legislation, make sure the departments are properly informed, but also I think to keep track of some of these one-time use funds to make sure they're being, that the council allocates to make sure that they're being acted upon throughout the year as able. But also the third thing would be keeping track of some of the many, my colleagues I know from Ward 8 mentioned, but keeping track of the many different reports and requirements in the code that are supposed to come to the council. And so that would be my motivation.
You, Alderman Huntley.
I just, so I wholeheartedly support the goal. Why did you make the choice to have it be under the city manager as opposed to the Office of Law, like the other staff member who works for the council?
Good question, and that is because the city clerks and law office deals with the creation of the legislation as well as passage. But once it's actually adopted, it's kicked into the city manager's office, which deals with how do you implement that into practice, the policies, and procedures for the city itself.
Thank you. That makes sense. And so right now with our city council associate, we have kind of an odd setup of the city council associate works for us, but doesn't report to us. Is it your understanding that this would be in a similar weird setup, for lack of a better word, that this position would be doing work for the council and would be in the way that the city council associate is a little bit different from all the other positions that we don't directly provide direction to?
Well, I think we could work that out, but I mean, I think the intent, I think they would obviously work a lot with the council, but I see that position more of providing a function of working for the city council at large, as far as just making sure that our policies get properly enacted and implemented. So, but no, I don't see it as far as like them helping us do, checking emails or doing research, because that stuff I think we can handle with existing staff.
Sure. I think what you're saying makes total sense. I think maybe we want an ordinance also to clarify this position is exempt from some, to just put it in the same place that we have the city council associate in code, but that doesn't have to happen in the budget.
Happy to circle up with you about that.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. First, to the Alderman from Ward 7's point, we can't have existing staff do research, check emails, etc., because that is not within the description of the role. And so my concern is that there needs to be a council associate legislative aid of some sort. I think we've all agreed on that. I do like the idea of the program specialist too, because there have been so many times where we've passed legislation or even amendments in previous budgets, and the programming is not able to roll out as effectively because staff is preoccupied, and there are 8 of us with several demands, and so I think this position is needed. I'm curious, though, why would you not just? I'm wondering if we'd run into issues with it in the city manager's office. And would it be effective? I mean, why not place it under the office of the city council, which is an existing office, and the person would be working on prerogatives of the city council.
Almost Savage.
I mean, so this. I mean, that is another avenue. We do have the ability to get contractual money and hire staff that's actually managed by the council based on seniority. But because what I was thinking with this position is they would have to interact very heavily with staff and the directors, that it would have more, I think it'd be more appropriate and have more gravitas, I think, being in the city manager's office, because the city manager is really set to do just that, manage the city, make sure everything operates per our adopted legislation and code. They write up staff reports, and so I think it's a very natural extension of that office.
You. Next.
Amendment number 28. This amendment adds $100,000 to the Transportation Department to study the feasibility and planning for a city-county regional electric transportation system using the reserve for one-time uses.
Savage?
Yeah, so this is the partnership with the county, who also is working to get they do have an amendment as well to contribute money. We're going to be meeting with the state to see if they would like to, but like it says, it's just looking at a regional, setting up an outline, a plan for a regional transportation system that we can conceptualize and then move forward as needed as partners to really build it out. And so it would be focusing on larger, but I think there would be a lot of focus on West Street, all the way from City Dock all the way out to the mall, which is the county's proposed transit hub. Well, the mall or Weaver Road, they're not quite 100% sure where they're going to put it, but that'd be the idea, is to build out, look at how we might be able to build that out.
Alderman Huntley?
I think I know what you're getting at here, Alderman Savage, and I appreciate it. I'm curious if you'd be open to this going under the existing CIP for an electric Annapolis mobility plan. Just seems like that might be a more sort of comprehensive place to put this.
Well, it's not ready for a CIP because that's a project we're absolutely moving forward with. This is still in a very conceptual stage, because if when it does turn into a project, I think we would have to create a standalone CIP page for the individual components. And I should also mention that the Resilience Authority, as the natural organization that is a partnership with the city county, would be most likely be one of the organization that's going to collect these funds and deal with the process for getting this report enacted. So does that answer your question as far as CIP?
You answered my question. You didn't exactly convince me, but we can hash it out when we debate.
Convince you on what?
On that it shouldn't be in the CIP. I still think it probably should be, but that's fine. We can talk about it later.
Okay, thank you. Next one.
Amendment number 29. This amendment changes the project description for the Traffic Safety Improvements Project. And the revised page follows. Alderman Savage, this one is yours if you wanted to comment.
Sorry.
This one's yours if you wanted to comment. Traffic safety improvements, text changes.
Yeah, Oh, yeah. So I've had requests to address sidewalk and also traffic safety issues on Bend Bay Beach. And so instead of making a standalone project, just kind of adding that is going to be one of the ones looked at with this larger CIP for traffic safety improvements.
Okay, thank you.
Amendment number 30. This amendment changes the project description for the Main Street rebricking project, and the amended project page follows.
Just clarifies that if we get around to rebricking Main Street, that'll also look at basically take a complete streets approach and look at adjusting for any kind of bike lane, that kind of thing.
I want to thank Alderman Savage for that, because widened sidewalks and less parking would be much bigger improvement, and closures at times. So thank you so much. Yeah. And for the public, of course, we are going to be rebricking Main Street, but we're not going to be doing a City Dock project and Main Street at the same time. So we're going to stagger these amazing improvements.
Amendment number 31. This amendment adds $100,000 to the Transportation Department to fund a study to look at the cost and feasibility of adding a circulator or electric jitney using the reserve for one-time uses.
Yeah, this is just to it kind of came up through our discussions with Department of Transportation and the Transportation Committee about the Transit Development Plan, and our circulator is the most successful component of our bus system, and just wanted to have them look at if that would help bridge the connection between downtown and the other parts of the city, to expand that, just to figure out if we want to add that in the future as an actual improvement.
Thank you. Okay. Next, thank you.
Amendment number 32, this amendment adds a new project. It's the Complete Street Supplemental Funding Project, and it's funded with using bonds of $525,000. The project page follows the amendment.
And so, mind if I just jump in on
Yeah, Alderman Savage.
So the idea with this is that other road projects or even resurfacing, we have a number of road projects in the CIP for improvements on roadways, be it adding sidewalks or changing the configuration. But this basically just gives a pool of money for those projects to pull from to make sure that they. So, for example, if it's, I'm just going to make it up because I can't think of one on the top of my head, but if we have something like Edgewood Road that we want to add a sidewalk on, or that we have to do some kind of road work on, this will allow that project to pull additional money from this CIP to look at adding complete streets. So that means looking at trees, looking at adding bike lanes, sidewalk improvements, road safety, everything all in one. But it just, because you'll notice I'm adding some things about complete streets to some of the other CIPs, but this would essentially provide some funding support.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious, do we have typically for Public Works, I think I forget the individual staff member who would send out a list of the CIP projects and who's next in line, and particularly for street updates and beautification. I think at one point it was distributed. Is that available? And to the alderman, would you be following that list, or are you thinking of individual projects that could pull from this? And the reason I ask is because I just want to be sure that the Primrose intersection is not skipped at all, because that's been waiting for a while.
Savage.
Well, I think a project like you're saying would certainly be, in my mind, able to pull from money from this CIP if needed. I'm kind of thinking it's similar to like we have our CIP set up for traffic safety, which is actually for many different projects, or our traffic signal CIP sheet, which is for multiple traffic signals, right? Just to give us something that we can access. Because I know Alderman from Ward 8 had said they've had a need over the years to try to add complete streets while that other work is being done in Eastport, but they weren't quite able to do it, I think, because of funding issues. This kind of tries to address that.
Thank you. Next.
Amendment number 33. This amendment adds $150,000 to the Department of Planning and Zoning to hire an outside consultant to lead a public education and outreach program targeting downtown businesses to relay the role and importance of pedestrianization and bikeonomics to the economic vitality downtown using the reserve for one-time uses.
Alderman Savage.
So the idea with this is we did in Economic Matters, we spoke with our Economic Development Office, and they just said they simply don't really have the bandwidth at the moment to be able to communicate with some of the downtown businesses about pedestrianization, as I think a number of us want to shift in that direction. And so I think in order to shift in that direction, one of the things we need to do is really help educate the business owners and residents down there as far as the benefits of pedestrianization to their businesses, but also just to the downtown environment. And so this would go towards hiring an outside firm to help do that, hold the public meetings, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Alderman Savage, I completely agree with you on this issue, but I will have sleepless nights voting for this. Where was the $150,000 figure derived from? I'm almost for certain that there has to be state or federal grants that could subsidize a program like this. And I'm concerned because we have a transportation department that has staff where their entire job description is to do this, or to at least improve the public's education on how to get around town and alternative modes of transportation. And so I'm curious, your thoughts on my statements, and then where the $150,000 come from.
Yeah, the proposal is for one-time use. And you're absolutely right. There may very well be grant money out there, and I do hope whoever's managing this on staff's end will look at that and get the applications out there. And as far as in-house versus out of house, I'm kind of thinking along the lines of I think something similar like what we saw in the Netherlands as far as the Dutch cycling embassy. Not that we're going to go after them in particular, but a group like that who is set up and structured to go for that very purpose, to go out to these different communities and teach everybody in that community about the benefits of that particular aspect. In this case, it wouldn't necessarily, it would include bicycle, but the focus is going to be on that pedestrianization and how that's going to help businesses. So that's why I think it's a benefit to going outside. Otherwise, we'd have to look, I think, at potentially adding additional staff. So I'd rather not go down that road. But I totally hear you on the grant money, and hopefully that'll offset this at some point.
Thank you. Next.
Amendment number 34. This amendment adds $100,000 to the Transportation Department to fund a study to look at the cost and feasibility of converting a few parking spaces in the city-owned parking garages into compact bike parking using the reserve for one-time uses.
I don't think I have to explain where I got the idea, but it's just essentially would take one or two or three, I don't entirely know till the study's done, parking spaces for cars and putting in some of the structures that we saw the mayor use in the Netherlands, where you stack the bikes and you can pull them down and load them and offload them. Just trying to think ahead as we build out the cycling infrastructure to look at what it might take to put in some of those.
Thank you. On Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to speak to this whole collection of additional monies for transportation and support Alderman Savage. I think we did a good job with the comprehensive plan, and we're doing a good job about thinking about increasing density to come up with more affordable housing. But I also subscribe to Alderman Savage's notion that at least concurrently with that, if not in advance of that, we really do need to think about increasing transportation for people. It's one thing to give people an affordable box to live in. It's another thing to give them a community that they can get into and out of. And I think there's other community development things we need to do, like daycare, which is Alderman Schondelmeyer's push, and maybe a dock in the box location. And the Director of Planning and Zoning has this notion of community benefit, where we actually are developing communities rather than strictly housing. So I think every one of these transportation funding amounts are very good complements to going along concurrently with our comp plan. So thank you for these amendments.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, on the last one.
Didn't see it. Alderman Huntley.
I just question, $100,000 is a real round number. How'd you come up with that is what we need? $100,000. How did you come up with that particular number here?
These are all ballparks, based on my own kind of engineer's estimate as far as my own experience. I'll fully admit, with a lot of these, I just did not have time to get more exact estimates from staff. If staff does have, if they're here listening, if they have better amounts to put in there, I'm happy to adjust it, but these are just ballparks.
Alderman Gay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm more inclined to support this if you just take out the study and buy the physical infrastructure necessary. I mean, because why would we give someone $100,000 to build? I mean, we already know. You don't need to study that. It's just like buy the bike racks and show the public how to use them. I think that would just. So I mean, I encourage you to put an amendment on the floor and just actually buy the physical infrastructure necessary.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Right. Next, and we are halfway there, and we're at halfway through our time. Doing pretty well, everyone.
Took
Good
the
up.
words right out of my mouth.
Hopefully,
All
the
right.
hard ones aren't the last ones. Thank you.
Amendment number 35. This amendment changes the project description for Traffic Safety Improvements Project. And the text is highlighted here.
So
Alderman Savage?
these are, I think, what we've been doing on Tyler Avenue, and I've been told by Public Works it's been very successful. And it's also modeled after what they do at, I wish Alderman Schandelmeyer was here, but I think what they do in Montreal, where they specifically have their quick build for a couple of years with the intention of converting. What I heard from Public Works, I don't know if they're here, but is that there was a benefit to allow, it gives you a trial to get the community used to it, to see if it works and make adjustments when you actually do get around to putting the permanent safety improvements in.
I'm all in for urban tacticalism. Thank you very much.
Amendment number 36. This amendment changes the project description for the City Facility Improvements Project.
Speaks for itself. Alderman Savage? No. Thank you.
Amendment number 37. This amendment changes the project description for Wells Cove Project. Amendment number 38. This amendment changes the project description for the Bay Ridge Avenue Bikeway Project. Amendment number 39. This amendment.
Could you go back? Sorry, go back to the description. That one. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I also had a question on this.
Oh, sorry, didn't see your hand up. Alderman Savage and Alderman Gay.
Yeah. So this last fiscal year, we approved one-time use money to go towards looking at the feasibility of reactivating an old railroad grade and turning it into a path of some kind, a multi-use path or what have you. Staff, I think, just didn't have time to implement that. And then they were talking about just, I believe, grouping it into this Bay Ridge study. And so that this just would basically make it formalized and reappropriate that money.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for the sponsoring alderperson. I do see here that there are outside funding sources, but are you including in this our discussion? And I believe we had set aside funding last year for the sidewalk improvement and bus shelter improvement at the intersection there at the bottom of Bay Ridge. And then we also needed to find funding for acquisition of land from, I think it's like the True Value Backlot or something like that, to create a connecting sidewalk. Are these projects going in tandem? I mean, it's on the exact same street.
Alderman Savage.
Yeah, it's a very good point. There are a number of overlapping projects on that corridor. This one is for the bike path, the multi-use path on Bay Ridge Avenue, but we have, like you alluded to, the bus shelter, potential bus shelter adjustment, and the sidewalk expansion at the gas station there, and then we have another one dealing with the intersection. I think I've already spoken with Public Works and Finance about that. I think that's something they want to address after the budget, as far as how the CIPs work in tandem and what order they might want to get done in and deal with the overlap. So you're absolutely right. But I think we could deal with that after the budget passed.
And this will be an amazing path that will get people from downtown and Eastport all the way through to Quiet Waters Park and Bay Ridge safely. It's a very busy street, so definitely will be a great improvement. So thank you all for that. Next.
Mr. Mayor, just follow up to that. When you say, post budget, are we going to reorganize projects on CIP to make sure that these things go in tandem, or how do you envision that working? I don't want the new projects or some of the old things that we had been working on that maybe didn't get the funding this year to not move forward because of new things. I'm really concerned about that intersection, and I know for like 2 years in the budget we've been trying to get that work through. And so, what do you want to do there?
Alderman Savage.
Well, I think we need to have more of a conversation with finance as well as Public Works, because we also have a similar problem on Tyler Avenue and Hilltop, right? We have Planning and Zoning's complete community initiative. We have a redesign of Tyler Hilltop. We have intersection improvements. And so I think one thing we spoke a little bit about with finance is potentially having CIPs that have sister relationships and connections with other CIP projects. And I think I also mentioned with the Public Works Director as far as figuring out a way to, and we talked, I think, in one of our recent meetings about listing chronologically some of the CIP projects so we know what has to happen first and that kind of thing. But I think that was just a bit more than we could chew with everything else going on right now with the budget.
Thank you.
The next amendment changes the project description for the traffic signal rehabilitation project. The next amendment changes the project description for the Department of Transportation roof replacement project.
I have a question. Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yep.
For both this and the previous one, we're essentially saying that in addition to the work that's going to get done, an assessment has to get done. I can imagine an assessment being very cheap or an assessment being very expensive. Do we have some estimate from Public Works of how much cost this would add for this and for the previous?
You want to come forward from Public Works to talk about green roofs? Can you go back to the last one too, please? Sorry, kid. Jake.
So, maybe it probably makes sense to answer these one by one because they are rather different projects. But essentially, my question was, if we're looking at the traffic signal rehabilitation and we're adding the requirement that a needs assessment be performed for potentially making it a traffic circle, what's that kind of needs assessment cost you, Mr. Wentz?
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Wentz. I'm with the Department of Public Works, Engineering and Construction. I'm the traffic engineer. So, I'm sorry. So as far as the justification for a traffic signal, that can be done in-house. It's relatively cheap. I can do that myself. So just my time. As far as the assessment for a roundabout, I'd say that's about $10,000. So,
okay, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to know.
Okay.
And then same question about the second one, which I assume is not your wheelhouse, Mr. Wentz. When we're talking about an assessment to be done to determine if the roofs can be retrofitted to include green roofs, do we need to increase the budget for that assessment to be completed?
Marcia Patrick, Assistant Director of Public Works. I don't know what that will cost, and I have not seen a cost estimate. It would definitely require a good estimate because when you add a green roof, you have to make sure the roof can support the additional weight of soil and plants and whatever. But I don't have that off the top of my head.
I will add too, if you look at the funding, majority of this is funded by grants. So we need to see if there's any conflicts with that as well for using that fund for those funds for an assessment.
Okay. Unless Mr. Flinner has something to add.
Do you have something, Matt? No.
Yeah, Matt Flinner, Director of Central Services. I just want to point out green roofs also come with an added maintenance cost. And so if we did explore adding new green roofs on existing facilities, Central Services would want to look at future maintenance costs that we would need to allocate to serve and care for all the shrubbery and what we have on that structure.
Thank you.
Amendment number 41 changes the project description for the Cedar Park Sidewalks project. Amendment number 42. This amendment changes the project description for Farragut
Can
Road.
we just go back a second there, Alderman?
Was there an amendment 40?
So some of the numbers are messed up, and we will correct them.
Oh, okay.
When we
All right.
bring this back
Well
forward
picked
to
up,
you.
Alderman Arnett.
Yeah, thank you. I thought you were hiding something from
No,
me.
sir. So 42 changes the project description for the Farragut Road Sidewalk, Howson Road to Road Boulevard project. That change of text is capitalized as shown on the screen. Amendment number 43. This serves as a placeholder for Edgewood Road calming assessment as Alderman Savage finalizes funding.
Alderman Savage.
Yeah, through conversations with Public Works, I don't think this will be needed because we can utilize our traffic safety CIP for these purposes.
Are you suggesting a withdrawal?
Yeah, I think we can just withdraw this one.
Thank you. Amendment number 44 changes the project description for the general sidewalks project.
Yeah, Alderman Arnett.
Mesh with the earlier amendment from the Finance Committee.
This is just text amendment. This is adding
Okay.
turtle-friendly curbing.
All right.
Alderman Savage.
It's just referencing code we passed a year or two ago. I think why my turtle's up here on my.
We all love turtles.
It's nothing new. It's just kind of referencing so staff doesn't lose track.
Thank you.
While we're on the topic of the general sidewalk CIP, man.
Alderman Huntley, sorry.
Yeah, I asked this a while ago at a finance committee meeting. Could we please get the photo swapped out for the general sidewalks because it shows a driveway apron the city's not responsible for. So can we just change the photo on it?
That's not one of us.
Well, sure.
Well, it's a driveway apron, and the general sidewalk CIP doesn't cover driveway aprons.
Sure, we'll ask DPW to provide a photo. Amendment number 45. This amendment adds $100,000 to the Office of the City Manager to support homeowners of Cars Beach annexation using the reserve for one-time uses. Funding for this effort was approved in 25 using the reserve for one-time uses. However, funds were not spent, but we did reallocate $23,000 for the lobbyist in 25.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you.
And we will add that text to this one.
Alderman Savage, and that will get a lot of places off of septic, right? If we annex
Yeah,
that,
they've failing septics. It's a community that is surrounded by a city, but it was left out, my understanding, at least somewhat because of racial reasons. And so this would, there is an interest. They're about to submit a petition for annexation probably by the end of next week. And this would help some of the idea is that it would help some of the lower income residents make the necessary connections and upgrades because they would have to shut down their old failing septics and connect to our sewer system. So this is, but I've also been told there may be state funding for that. So we may not need all of this money, but we just won't know yet.
Great, thank you.
I had a question.
Oh, sorry, Alderman Huntley.
Apologies, maybe I misheard, but there was some mention of this about the lobbyist. How does this intersect with the lobbyist?
Yep. So that 100,000 that was approved in the FY25 budget for one time, 77,000 of that was still available. The 23,000 was repurposed for the lobbyist.
There was the initial allocation for the federal lobbyist had been slightly underfunded, and we had checked with Alderman Savage about using those funds since they weren't likely to be used to fill that out. The FY26 budget has the complete amount built in.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Amendment 46, the amendment adds $50,000 to the police department for an AI street camera monitoring feasibility study using the one-time reserves. And again, the same thing, funding was approved in FY25 and it's just reusing funds that were not spent.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Alderman Gay.
Thank you. I'd just like a better understanding of what the Annapolis Police Department will be doing with artificially intelligent cameras in our communities. Is this for what is their hope to get out of the feasibility study? And I mean, do they intend to use the funds this year or?
You Alderman Savage? Alderman Savage, trying to keep up with technology, I think.
Yeah, because actually, I think it was transportation. We thought we were going to get a presentation on one thing, but we got it from another. But in any case, the person who presented informed us about some technology that's out there. And this would be safety cameras that are monitored by AI. So personally, since this is my amendment, what I would like to see is if it can be used to supplement, because I know there are certain issues with AI, as far as profiling, but on the other hand, it also is incredibly reliable as far as you don't have to worry about human errors and getting tired and sleepy. So it just wonder, I'm fully aware and also share concerns about some of the AI aspect, but that's one of the things I want this to look at is what are the concerns? Could this help us? Because right now we do have a lot of staff dedicated to monitoring those cameras, and I just want to look at ways we can strengthen it.
I appreciate you explaining that, and I would hope that you put emphasis on your study, looking at the errors in history of ways in which you hit it right on the head. Racial profiling has been used with artificial intelligence, and how far they have come. But yeah, please put an emphasis on that.
You next, please.
Amendment number 47. This amendment adds $200,000 to the Department of Public Works Traffic Division to fund the Bay Ridge Road Diet study using the reserve for one-time uses. Funding for this effort was approved in 25 using the reserve for one-time uses. However, the funds were not spent.
Another scientific number, 200?
No. So this is really the idea is it ties with our comprehensive plan implementation. We've identified that part of Bay Ridge as being ideal for mixed use, a lot of redevelopment potential. We also have some other annexation potential right along Bay Ridge, and so this would be right in there. And I also include looking at that intersection that is, as a lot of you have heard by now, Forest Drive is the most dangerous road in the county, and that intersection is probably right up there because we have a ton of accidents there. So, looking for some of those safety improvements.
Amendment number 48 adds $50,000 to the Department of Recreation and Parks Division for ecological training using the reserve for one-time uses. Amendment. Go ahead.
Alderman Savage, could you explain this some more? I love ecological training as much as the next guy, but what are we actually doing here?
So the idea with this is that right now we're relying on private nonprofit groups to do tree maintenance, and not that. So, anyways, I think there'd be help to have staff get some training to be able to do some of the invasive species management, including but not just ivy. But also, I know the Rec and Parks has a number of stormwater facilities, rain gardens that may need some specialized attention, as well as some additional trail maintenance, learning about new environmental techniques to maintain erosion control, but also for vegetative maintenance.
Amendment number 49. This is a placeholder for an amendment as Alderman Savage finalizes discussion with Recreation and Parks to modify the Stanton Center capital project.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Savage?
Yeah, I can't really. It's a placeholder because until we get the information at the work session next week, I really don't know exactly what the proposal is because I'm trying to get my head around all the improvements needed at Stanton Center, what's been done, because we also have money from the state, and I've been informed by a member of our state delegation that we need to use this money up within a short period of time, or else the state's they're not going to reappropriate because their budget issues, they're just going to take it back. And so we need to make sure it's actually used up on things that can get done, and also very, things that the public can benefit from in the short term instead of long term. So anyway, that's the idea. But I don't know details till we get that from staff.
The work session on Monday. Next, please.
Amendment number 50. This amendment adds $200,000 to the Transportation Department to fund a study with the county to perform a transit analysis to determine short-range and long-range goals and potential transit improvements to increase ridership and reduce car reliance along the corridor using the reserve for one-time uses.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Gay.
Thank you so much. This seems redundant, Alderman Savage, of previous amendments. Can you explain the difference in 30 seconds or less?
I'll try. So the other big transit one was focusing on the regional electric transportation system, but that did also have a focus on West Street. This one would not have to worry about the regional aspect, but it would look at focus on Forest Drive. Kind of came out of our conversation with ADOT at the Transportation Committee, where I just realized they didn't really. I want to supplement that effort to provide some specific improvements on Forest Drive that because again, we have legislation on the book introduced to increase density along Forest Drive corridor, and I want to be able to get to a point where we have a plan for a solution that we can point developers to help fund, right? And if we create the tax incremental financing mechanism, we can use that to have that money go towards this effort as well. So I'm trying to make sure we stay at least, if not ahead, pace with the desire to add density.
For the good, at the end, for the good of the order, I would hope my colleagues would indulge an amendment for a grant administrator. Again, I know the last grant administrator got moved to planning and zoning, I believe, and I expressed concern about that for this very reason. Every department has projects that are incredibly important to the older people, our community, to the staff that's working on them, and they need grant money. This is something, again, where I'm sure the state or the federal government, in better financial terms, would definitely provide us a grant to look at and study this. And I don't know why we have such a struggle here getting grant money that's not attached to city dock or for these smaller, study projects that are really necessary. And I'm going to support it because you put the time into this, but at 200,000 just seems like a lot.
Yeah. Alderman Huntley?
Yeah, I just want to explain there's a duplication of cuts here, right? This is paid for with funds that the finance committee cut and put towards sidewalks.
We haven't gotten to that one yet.
I'm sorry?
We haven't gotten to that one yet, right? We're still on the 200,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. Apologies.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? Okay, next, thank you.
Amendment number 51. This amendment adds a new project funded by a decrease in cost for the Pit Moyer restroom upgrade project by 100,000 and the traffic signal rehabilitation project by 200,000. The cost of this new project, as this amendment is drafted, is 300,000. We do have two concerns with this one. Amendment 24 already cuts 100,000 from the Pit Moyer restroom and renovation project and 200,000 from the traffic signal rehab project. And I'll let Brittany talk about the next concern.
Additionally, after speaking with the department, they feel that the full funding for this new project is actually closer to 525,000. The way the amendment is presented is only 300 because that was the money that was cut from the other projects. But I just caution that it might be a follow-up conversation with the department to find out what exactly that 300 would fund and not fund a portion of a project.
And my apologies, Director Moran.
Alderman Ned?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, unlike some of my colleagues, I will point out this is my one and only amendment.
One and only. I'm with you. I support you.
And this is actually broader than a Ward 8 interest. It really is primarily focused on downtown and the development of downtown. But these numbers came out of a meeting that we had with the city manager and the finance staff and the finance director. And I recognize they're duplicative of monies that want to go someplace else. I think after we get through this exercise, Director Moran pointed out that we're spending $1.9 million out of 1.4 available. And I would suggest that a lot of these projects, we've given a lot to Transportation Department and all the other departments. I'm wondering if they can do all of these things in 1 year with one-time only money. And so I think it would be incumbent on all of us, particularly those with many amendments, to come back and do some discussion with the department heads and prioritization. Maybe some of these happen in fiscal 26. Maybe some of these things will just because of workloads have to go to fiscal 27 or some out year. But clearly, and as usual, we are politicians and we want to spend more money than we have. We saw that happen last night on Capitol Hill. So we are going to have to get into some kind of a reconciliation process. But this particular project is something that I've been working with Public Works on for a number of years now. And I think that it is an important one. It's why I put all of my eggs in this one basket. And I urge that we find the money to do this in some way, and that'll get sorted out in the budget process.
Thank you. And for the public, before I go to the other councils, this would be transformative, changing the direction of traffic on Main Street to come into the city from the top of Main Street. Would be an amazing statement and amazing finishing work for Alderman Arnett here. So I'm going to support you on this. Alderman Gay had his hand up first. I think then Alderman Savage.
Yes,
Alderman
please
Huntley.
add me as a co-sponsor, please. Thank you.
Alderman Savage.
Okay. Well, so I was just told this is for the actual improvements just on Duke of Gloucester.
It
Main
involves
Street.
Duke of Gloucester, Church Circle, and Main Street. And they've already done the study. This is to begin the actual implementation. And I do agree that the director told us at that meeting we had that the cost is $525. I want to get this project started. It's my last project for all intents and purposes. And we'll take whatever money we can get to get it started, and recognize that in the next fiscal year or some point we'll have to come in and supplement it. But the intent here is to get it on the book and to get it going, and get it going now. And I think this is a precursor, as the mayor said earlier, to when we get around to rebricking Main Street. We need to have all of this taken care of. I think it's also consistent with one of the projects that Alderman Savage talked about earlier. When we're rethinking Main Street, we need to think about it as complete streets. We need to think about it as bicycle lanes. We also need to think about it as the ability to open and close Main Street with ballards for special events and maybe on weekends. So I mean, it's a huge project that has lots of implications for the future of downtown, and I hope the council will consider this when we make our final cuts.
Thank you. Alderman Savage, then Alderman Huntley.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to get this moving, because I think the earlier we get it done, it opens up a lot of other potential for us. The only question I would have is some of the overlapping and related projects. One thing I thought, I don't think we ended up asking for money because I thought it was going to be covered by plan and zoning in their overall citywide mobility plan. But it turns out, because there's some of the related things that I think would be important to do at some point, sooner rather than later, would be the bollards. At some point, we're going to need to look at how actually funding. Maybe we get away again for the next year or so with some of the temporary, but it'd be nice to have deployable bollards, Main Street, West Street, maybe even parts of Eastport for pedestrian safety. Dining Under the Stars is like every week, once a week, right?
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday, yeah. So every week in the summer, warmer months, and so I think it'd be efficient to have something we can easily deploy. Same thing for events on Main Street. But I guess that I was originally going to propose that in the budget, but I think kind of got lost in the mix for bollards. But I suppose we could do that later. But the other related component, which I think we should still circle back to at some point, is traffic circulation study. Again, we learned about this concept in Europe, but they have folks who look at where you want cars, where you don't want cars, and where you want to focus pedestrians, and then they look at how do you change your traffic patterns to facilitate that. And I think this obviously is a key part of that, but I do think we should think bigger at some point to get a separate study for it's also including Eastport traffic circulation study. We've had pieces of it in the past, but I think looking at exactly which streets could be made one way and which which should not, I think it would be helpful to have. But again, it sounds like that might be a separate effort.
And if I could just add to that, after Ward 1, Ward 8 is the next biggest dining and other shopping attraction areas on 4th Street in particular, but throughout the ward. And I think that getting people out of cars and onto a circulator and back and forth between Wards 1 and Ward 8 is something that this will lend itself to. This doesn't cover that, but I think it should be part and parcel of that whole concept of making it easy for people, besides using the electric ferry, to get from Ward 8 to Ward 1 and back.
And that should be pretty easy to get people in Eastport to agree which way the traffic goes. I think. Yeah.
Blue Angels, we need to put the bridge up and leave it up so that people go out of Ward 8 one direction and Ward 1 in another direction.
Okay. Anybody else? Alderman Huntley, sorry.
So a couple different things on this. First, on the pay for, apologies, Alderman Arnett, I think maybe we got our wires crossed on this, but I think we did have, coming out of that meeting, a way to put some of the funds towards this. It's just not this. So we should circle up on that and make sure that the pay for is correct. And maybe really the easiest thing to do is pay for it out of bond funding as in terms of the amendment, and then we find ways to cut elsewhere. Yes, I understand if that creates concerns. I want to make sure we fully offset it, but just as a procedural matter, I think it might make the most sense to do it that way for this. As far as the full cost of it, in my opinion, it's not my amendment, but in my opinion, what it costs to actually do the design should be what we put in here, rather than $300,000 and then sit on that for a year. Because what we're talking about doing here is a design estimate, or is a design, and so I don't think we can really have somebody do half a design. The money's just going to sit there. And then the third thing I'll say is, just as we're thinking about funding it, what makes this distinct from so many of the other ones that we've talked about is it needs to be funded out of the capital budget, right? It's not like we would just take one-time money and put it into this, because we are ultimately moving towards making a capital improvement that will have maintenance costs. So as we're thinking about that funding, it's not like we can cut, 3 of Rob's many studies out of one time, Alderman Savage's many studies out of one-time funding, and put it towards this. We have to find other capital projects. So a handful of different thoughts on that. But ultimately, I'm saying, let's make it reflect the actual cost. Let's have it come out of bond funding, or just capital funding in general. It could be bond or capital reserve. And then let's talk about what the ways are that we can find places to cut to make that happen.
Great. Thank you. Next.
Alderman Savage, your comment on the safety bollards, that should be included in that language. So we'll make sure that we update the page to reflect that.
If I could add on that, and this may be apocryphal and Ms. Patrick can speak to it, but I know years ago Ellen Moyer bought Ballards. I think they've been stored at Brown Contracting. These are actual ones that you have to lift in and out rather than motorized ones, which I think you're thinking of and probably our better solution. But I do think we paid a while ago for some Ballards to go at the head of Main Street and at Conduit Street and down at the foot also. But we need to find out if there's some Ballards floating around.
Amendment number 52 adds $2,000 to community grants for GVO back to school drive support using the reserve for one-time uses.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yep, we support it.
Yeah, no problem. And I appreciate that, but it's not what I submitted at all. And I went back and pulled up the Google form that I submitted. This isn't the language or funding mechanism that I had proposed in. So I would hope that that could be addressed before.
Can you tell us how you would like the amendment to be drafted, please?
Well, what I wrote in the form that you all created was that it was for 10,000 and that it would move 3,000 from We Care and Friends, 5,000 from Community Action Agency, and 1,000 from the Maryland Ballet Theater. And
Was that submitted after the 9th?
No, ma'am. This was submitted May 9th, 2025, 11:31 a.m.
Okay. We'll reflect the changes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so
Get
much.
that in there. Thank you. Yep.
Amendment number 53 adds $2,000 to community grants for Superior Future using a reserve for one-time uses.
100% correct. Thank you.
Okay. Is that incorrect?
No, I said 100% correct. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Amendment 54 adds $250,000 to the Department of Planning and Zoning to establish the City of Annapolis Homeownership Assistance Program using the reserve for one-time uses.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to explain?
On we go. Yep.
Thank you very much. Would really like the council's support on establishing this. I'm envisioning this being in the Community Development Office, which was formerly managed by Ms. Wellman, now Ms. Ruffin, in either I guess $10,000 or $20,000 increments to assist with closing and down payment cost. My hope is that as we've done in economic development, we can partner with the county that already runs a homeownership program and allow our City of Annapolis residents to go into the courses and classes that they take and award them funding is separately from the county. That's what I'm envisioning for this homeownership program.
Okay. Thank you. Next, please.
Amendment number 55 decreases the total cost for the Annapolis Walk project by $600,000 in FY26, $100,000 in FY27. It also increases the cost of the General Roadways project by $400,000 in FY26, and General Sidewalks project by $100,000 in FY27.
Yeah, I'll just say, so this is, yeah, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. This is my amendment because the change to this project, this is a CIP we've had for a while. It puts in a park, and then, and that was in last year, and I'm all over helping revamp the park. But what was in the mayor's proposed budget was an additional $700,000, 626 and 127 to add a net of 39 parking spots. And so to me, this is not a good way to spend $700,000 to put in 39 parking spots. Works out to $18,000 per spot, which is more than, it's significantly more than we would be spending otherwise. So I propose that we use that money to put our streets into a better condition and also not spend some of the bond funding. So just to be clear, it removes $600,000 in FY26, $100,000 in FY27. In FY26, it puts $400,000 into streets and leaves $200,000 not spent, and then puts that $100,000 for FY27 into the sidewalk program for 27.
Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a plethora of questions, and I really don't know where to begin since we're proposing $600,000 be taken away from a community that has been waiting for 20 years, I might add, to get adequate parking. And what I have in front of me is a description of the CIP from 23, 24, 25, and 26. This project should have been completed this year in 25, and it was not. There has been an increase in the cost, of course, as everything, but a significant increase. I would like for Director Patrick to come up and help us to understand the true cost of this, because this is not about parking at a park. This is all about parking in a community, to give a community adequate parking where they live. And so to think about cutting a significant amount speaks to the value and the quality of life of this community, my community particularly, but Ward 4. And so I think we need to be clear because, you know, this project went from $500,000 in 23 to $1.5 million in 26. And then it says something different in our CIP, in our budget books. So I would really like for us to understand what this is all about. The plan from 2 public works directors prior to was to come up with the means of adding more parking. The parking that is around the park is not parking for the park, but parking for the residents who live around the park. And right now, that parking is parallel parking. And we did have this discussion in the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee voted down this proposal to strip funding.
Respectfully,
I might add.
Mr. Mayor, respectfully, that was.
I think Alderman Finlayson has the floor, and then when you're ready, you can answer that.
I'd like to make a point of information. The Finance Committee did not vote on this amendment.
I'm sorry, we did not vote on it at all? Because
Correct.
I know Alderwoman O'Neill spoke in opposition to cutting the fund, so it didn't come to a vote. But to change the parking from parallel park to pull-in parking, that would add additional parking, and 22 spaces, I think, would have been added to the community. It would have meant taking 3 feet from each side of the park, which would have still left the park a significant area, more than enough space to play soccer and any other amenity that Mr. Mayor and I have talked about adding to this park for many years. And so the change in the cost in part is because of the change in the parking, because the sidewalks have to be taken out, the curbs have to be taken out and put in new curbs, new sidewalks. Stormwater, I understand, has to be added. We don't know whether it's pervious or impervious surfaces that are being proposed. But there are ways to reduce the cost. And I had asked our city manager to set up a meeting with the director so we could get to the root of the cost of this project, because I don't think we have a true cost. So I just wanted it to be clear, because on the surface, and if you look at the CIP sheet, it's all about a playground, and it really is not. The playground is a part of it. I don't want to say a small part, because for the kids, it's a big part. But it's not the significant piece of this. The significant piece is providing adequate funding for the residents who live in this community. And yes, we want to resurface the other basketball court. It took us 2 years to get the first one redone. And Mr. Mayor, we had hoped to get that done this summer. So, you know, I just want us to be clear that this amendment would be having a significant impact on the quality of life for residents in Ward 4. And this has been on the books for many, many years. And it's been kicked down the road for many, many years. So it's time. And Ms. Patrick, do you mind coming up? I'm sorry, I hate to put you on the spot. But, you know, you're very well aware that this has been on the books for a long time. And you will recall that your director, Mr. Johnson, is the one who proposed turning these parking spaces around to add space. So can you add something to this? I know I've given a long speech about it, but anything that you could add about it. And if you would be willing, or your Mr. Burr, to sit down with the city manager and myself to figure out exactly what this cost is all about.
Marcia Patrick, Assistant Director of Public Works. And I can say that I think a meeting probably is what would be best for discussion. I'm not, and I believe me, I remember this project being around for many years, and you know that the parking has been a very large part of the issue. So I've always known that is your concern. I don't know what he's spoken to you about. I know he mentioned a cost of $20,000 per space when you look at the whole cost. And, that is a significant cost per parking space. But I think a further discussion might be a good idea to make sure that everyone understands the issues.
Well, what we were told in finance, that it was 18,000 a space. But then there was no extrapolating out how much of that is stormwater, how much of that is pervious surface as opposed to impervious. So there are a lot of elements to consider when we're trying to figure out what the cost of this park really is. But I just wanted to be clear that this is something that's been on the books and should not be postponed any further than it has been. So thank you. Sorry for putting you on.
Thank you.
And I want to point out that the parking was an addition to the original park idea. And we saw it as an opportunity to do head-in parking. And it seemed reasonable when it was under 500. And I think, the cost increases is why we're here. But I think very important to have a meeting on that and see if there's any possibility of value engineering it down, because the community needs the parking. And so, but it just seems high, and I can understand both sides.
And Mr. Mayor, if we could get a true picture of what the project is, because it makes it look like it's about a park. And that's a small part of what the whole dynamic is about.
Thank you.
And Ms. Buckland, I'll look forward to that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amendment number 56 adds a new project entitled General Sidewalks Brick. This project's funded with $252,000 of bonds and $252,000 of capital reserve.
May I explain?
Alderman Huntley?
Yeah. So what I'm intending to do here is to split our existing general sidewalk fund, or I should say the newly plussed up general sidewalks fund, assuming that the finance committee amendments pass, into two funds: a regular general sidewalks fund and then a general sidewalks brick fund. And the reason for that is that our brick sidewalks both cost about 3 times as much to repair and are in some of our heaviest commercial and tourist areas, and are uniquely dangerous when they are when they need to be repaired in a way that concrete ones aren't. But more importantly than anything else, it's because they have different costs, and having the performance metric combine the two of them means that the brick sidewalks are always going to get short shrift. So right now we have $600,000 in our general sidewalks fund, and to redo both sides of one block of brick sidewalk, and actually we can use this example of Charles Street, which is right out here, costs $240,000. So if we look around and think about all the streets that have brick sidewalks, think about if we were going to redo just 2 blocks of those per year, that would eat up $480,000 of our existing $600,000 sidewalk budget, leaving only $120,000 for everywhere else. So I think the point of this is really just to separate out what are genuinely 2 pretty different types of sidewalk repair.
You, Alderman Savage?
So what's the current balance of our capital reserve fund? I mean, like if this were to pass, how much would we have left? And would we still be within our limits?
If all of it's passed?
I mean, well, in this particular.
So this is, we've got $1 million. If you look on the screen, we have $1 million that we haven't tapped into yet. This is 252,000. So it'll bring it down to the 800. Around 800.
820 remaining?
Correct.
And what are our guidelines for how much we want to carry over in that?
So there's actually not a specific policy. So it kind of leaves it up to the discretion of council.
Okay.
But that's kind of why in the beginning we cautioned that you should only utilize what's physically there at the time, knowing that anything that's going to roll forward from the current year savings will help replenish that fund. So
right. Well, what
professional recommendation would be that utilizing that as a ceiling, the $1 million as a ceiling.
What are you more concerned about, our general bond funding or capital reserve? Because this seems like it'd be appropriate to have entirely funded out of capital reserve.
There's pros and cons to both. I have more concerns with issuing bonds because you pay interest on bonds. And there's a lot of uncertainty with the market right now. And when we go to bond sale, what the potential interest rate could be. And then the impact of the debt service in future years having to be funded.
Yeah, I would just suggest maybe we look at having it all capital reserve. We can always change it in the future if we need to, but
No, Mr. Mayor, I think that the intention here, and maybe we need to clarify it in the language, the intention is to not add additional funding that we would require issuing additional bonds or additional capital reserve. The intention is to simply, once we've hopefully passed the Finance Committee amendment to add money to the sidewalks fund and put that up to 1.1 million, to then split that into, it's like 60-40. It's not quite in half. So I understand the language in here is not clear on that, but the intention is not to use additional bond or additional capital reserve funding. It's to use the funding that we have, I don't want to say already because it assumes passage of the Finance Committee amendment, but splitting the somewhat existing sidewalk funding into general and this.
and what's the number of the finance one? So I can reference it.
After the Finance Committee amendment, the general sidewalk fund would stand at $1.1 million.
I mean, the amendment number for finance.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's pretty early on. I'll look it up right now.
To be transparent, we need to better draft this amendment then. So we'll work with you all to figure out how to draft that.
Yeah, we can talk.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry, it's here.
All right.
Amendment number 57. This amendment adds $5,000 to the Department of Planning and Zoning and $5,000 to the Office of the City Manager for beautifying downtown Annapolis using contingency.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Alderman Gay, then Alderman O'Neill.
Just curious, what fund or what organization are you giving this to do the beautification? What are you envisioning, and why is this not going to like Parks and Recs landscaping budget or something like that?
Alderman Huntley.
Yeah. So the intention of this, it's just $10,000. It's $5,000 each for Annapolis in Bloom, which is an existing program. I think it's off the top of my head, I think it's funded at $25,000, but I could be wrong on that. And to essentially the downtown holiday decorations. And the reason for that is that both of these pots of funding have not increased over the past, 5-ish years. And so what's been getting delivered has been less and less because of inflation. So the intention of this amendment is just to catch those two programs, downtown Annapolis and Bloom, or maybe it's Annapolis and Bloom, and the holiday decorations up to inflation. That's all.
Okay. Alderman O'Neill.
I had a similar question because I believe in our regular budget, we've already increased funding to Downtown Annapolis Partnership and Annapolis in Bloom.
Alderman Huntley.
I would double check. I didn't think we had increased funding to Annapolis in Bloom. I believe the general operating support to Downtown Annapolis Partnership may have been increased, but that would not go towards the holiday decorations. Does that sound correct to you, Mr. Trudeau?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay,
So there was
thank
no
you.
increase in those.
We increased it's in contractual services. It was $50,000 in 25. It's $70,000 in 26 to the Downtown Annapolis Partnership Program.
And that's the general operating support for them, right? That is not the holiday or the Annapolis in Bloom.
Correct. There's another line item, $20,000 for Downtown Annapolis Partnership, Annapolis and Bloom. That has remained unchanged from 25.
And the $20,000 doesn't go towards. What exactly is Annapolis in Bloom? Do we have that
Sure.
description?
It's all of the flowers downtown. So the flower baskets, think about in market space where there are flowers put out. And I think actually they just got hung up pretty recently. I think I was seeing pictures. So, but essentially it's flowers downtown.
So it's 150 baskets went out on Monday this week. We used to do some stand-up pots as well, but I think as costs have gone up, we've reduced the number. But we put out 150 on Monday. So.
Right. I saw a social media post about the baskets going out, and I understand that Garden Girls put those up. So is that a partnership that's going on between DAP and Garden Girls, or is that a separate line item?
No, that's correct. Garden Girls puts them up on contract. They're the ones doing the work, but the funding, it comes from the city council and then goes to DAP, and then I think they pay Garden Girls to do it directly. I think it's worth if what you're kind of getting at there is, could the city just contract directly with Garden Girls? Maybe that's a good point. But it goes under city. Actually, is this one under planning and zoning or under city manager? But yes. So to answer your question, it goes from the city to DAP to Garden Girls to plants on the ground.
Okay. I would love to see an accounting of that, what's being contracted and versus what's being paid directly to Garden Girls. Is that possible for a future date? Not at this moment, but
Sure.
From budget manager.
I think remember, absolutely, we'll get that for you. And remember, we did use Homestead Gardens. It was quite a lot more than that. And then we did invest in self-watering hanging baskets to reduce the cost. And then we did have Parks and Rec get involved in the watering program. So we've managed to bring the number down, my understanding, but we'll get you an accounting of that.
Thank you.
The next amendment is a Huntley amendment, not a Savage amendment. Our team will correct that. This amendment reallocates $73,000 for a federal lobbyist and $50,000 for a state lobbyist from the office of the city manager to the mayor's office.
Yes, and so this was the finance committee decided that they wanted to keep it the same. So I brought this forward as a amendment so that the full council could vote on it. And I'll just say, my intention here is for both the lobbyists to be under the mayor's office rather than the city manager's office. I have spoken with both the mayor's office and the city manager's office, and both say they will work together either way. But my belief is that the mayor's office is really best equipped to handle these kind of political matters. And I think we want to keep politics out of our city manager's office, whereas having a lobbyist say to the mayor, hey, we need you to come to this event and do the hobnobbing, I think that makes a lot more sense than asking the city manager to do it.
You. Alderman Savage.
Yeah, at some point, I'd like to get Mayor's thoughts on this because I still am not so sure on the state lobbyist need. Because again, I think I know I've shifted back and forth on some of my thinking on this, but I do think that's really, in many ways, our job, including the mayor, to do. And we also have MML. Not that we always agree with MML, but what kind of services do they have that we could take advantage of as far as building off that relationship? So just some things that I'm wondering about relating to this.
Alderman Huntley.
I don't want to get too much into debate, but I'll just say my quintessential example of why we need a state lobbyist is the noise camera pilot program that occurred last year. That a bill was in the State House that included Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County. There was a concern about how it would affect farmers in South County. So Anne Arundel County got stripped out of that bill. And if we had had a lobbyist watching that kind of thing for us, they could have easily gone to the sponsor and just said, oh, take out the rest of Anne Arundel County, but leave it in Annapolis. And now we're going to have to go through a whole rigmarole to get authority to do that. And we're going to have foregone at least 2 years of revenues from a real problem. I mean, every time we sit here, we have somebody rip down Duke of Gloucester. So that is just one very concrete example to me of how a state lobbyist would benefit specifically Annapolis in a way that MML doesn't.
Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we have a federal lobbyist who I believe answers to the city manager. And that system has worked for us very well. Over many years, I have advocated for a local lobbyist. Not that the mayor's not doing a great job, but this is not his primary job. And the example that Alderman Huntley just gave was a good example on why we should have our own state lobbyist. One who doesn't answer to a political person and cannot be swayed by a political person or a party, but who answers to the city manager, who is nonpartisan. Because our legislation, while it falls somewhere in partisan politics, doesn't always fall that way. You know, when the police department and the fire department have legislation in, they don't ask what party is sponsoring it or what party is going to have the greatest impact. They just want the legislation to be supportive of the community they serve. And so keeping it neutral in the city manager's office keeps it neutral. And it frees up the mayor. The mayor can still lobby as he sees fit, or she sees fit, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't take away from a professional, full-time person who's doing the job. So, thank
you. Next.
Amendment number 59. This amendment adds $7,500 to the Department of Recreation and Parks Stanton Center Division to extend the hours of operation using the reserve for one-time uses.
Okay.
Can you please add me as a co-sponsor? I just said I wanted to be a co-sponsor. That's all.
Got it. Amendment number 60. This amendment adds $10,000 to the Office of Community Services for a Summer Reach program using the reserve for one-time uses.
Alderman Pindell Charles.
What's a Summer Reach program?
It is a program intended for teens, 13 to 18. It was run last year by an individual using their own personal funds, and they reached out to me to see if the city would support it. It will be run in the Clay Street area, and it'll be run by an individual who has been running programs for many years, both in the city and privately.
Thank you.
Alderman Savage.
So is the intention, is it truly a one-time use? Like, is this something you anticipate wanting to do again next fiscal year?
I encouraged the organization to, if we could get it passed in one-time use, that they would then go through the community grants program for future.
Alderman O'Neill, is this a position where the youth will be working, or is this more of a kind of a program that helps kids? Is this more of a mentoring program, I guess?
It's more of a mentoring program. When it was run last year, they did a series of field trips, exposing children to things like a baseball game for the first time ever. They went to Longwood Gardens for one. They also take them to Truxton Park Pool and teach swimming lessons where needed. It was in operation 5 days a week for 6 weeks. No, 8 weeks, sorry. For 8 weeks. And it focused on teens, which are often left out of summer camp programs.
Thank you.
You. Next.
Amendment number 61. This amendment adds $1,000 to the Office of Community Services for magnetic screens at Morris Blum using the reserve for one-time uses.
Question. Describe these magnetic screens.
Thank you. I know that this sounds a little bit silly, but Morris Blum has been under construction for 2 years. There are approximately 24 units in Morris Blum that have outside decks. They have doors that lead to those outside decks.
We talked about this. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Now recall.
The screens they're not attached in any way that would disrupt the integrity of the frame of the doors. They are magnetized to the frames of the doors.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman
Thank you
Gay.
for the reminder.
Thank you. Please add me as a co-sponsor. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Next.
Amendment number 62. This amendment adds $175,000 to the Department of Public Works Traffic Division for a traffic calming project on Tyler Avenue using the reserve for one-time uses.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Gay, then Alderman Huntley.
Thank you very much. I had spoke with planning and zoning and their chief of comprehensive planning for a while now, dating back to last year, just in regards to obviously the need for some sort of traffic calming on Tyler Avenue. There is freshly paved and is wide open, and it's probably 3 lanes. And so there's just a lot of speed going on there. Kids are walking to school. And the residents are frustrated. And so I wanted to do a pilot traffic calming program there in collaboration with the chief of comprehensive planning, as well as Mr. Wentz, the traffic engineer. And so this was my effort to get the funding here to do so immediately this summer. So that was my thoughts of putting this amendment in.
Thank you. Who did I say next? I had these guys had their hands up first. Sorry, Alderman Savage and then Alderman Huntley, right?
Again, I think a good amendment, Alderman. I just want to suggest a potential alternative because I have a similar issue that popped up for Edgewood Road and Bemba Beach Road. You might be able to just call out this particular project in our traffic safety improvements CIP, because I believe that's what that funding is there for, these types of projects. So you might not need any new funding to do what you're trying to do.
Alderman Huntley, then Alderman Pindell Charles.
I yield my time to Budget Manager Trudeau.
Thank you, sir. We had some questions regarding this, some clarification questions on what's needed, if it's to be a true capital project or is it a study with some minor outlay purchases. And then, of course, what Alderman Savage said about could we add this language to an existing project. So if we could get some clarification, because we're not sure if this should be a true capital project or if it's appropriate to use the one-time uses for this.
Thank you. We'll do that research and finalize that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm open to discussing alternative funding sources, but it will be funded this year. Tyler Avenue was paved years ago. And I've, again, spoken to the appropriate staff at length about my desire to have this traffic fixed or have this issue fixed. And when we spoke again, the funding was needed to be added to the budget. I believe when the alderman from Ward 5 did so, a similar mechanism was used where they avoided study, etc., and just said it was a pilot for Hilltop Lane. And so I was following precedent. And so I hope if I could get clarification from finance or the directors, I'd be more than willing to figure out the best way to move forward here. But I do think this is a critically important infrastructure project.
Agree. Alderman Pindell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm thinking about a lot of these projects that we're proposing here and these amendments. And I know Alderman Gay for the past several years has had the stellar program of our summer, I'll call them summer interns. And I don't know, I know time is short in the summer, but it would be a fantastic opportunity for some of these interns to work on some of these projects. Like I said, the time is short in the summer, but I think we need to look at all of these projects from the lens of giving young people an opportunity at least to be around these projects, if not working to some degree on looking at what's available, maybe doing research and that sort of thing. So I'm putting that out there, Alderman Gay, because I think it's a worthwhile situation for everyone.
Mr. Mayor, if I could also just
Alderman Gay.
Thank you. I'm wondering for finance, the finance team, and also to the alderman from Ward 7, if your previous amendment I think you had put aside money for traffic calming, and you indicated that you had no projects signed up, and so I could withdraw this if you believe that I think it was, I'm trying to find the amendment, your traffic calming amendment. Do you, Alderman, remember which one it was?
Alderman Savage suggested adding the language to the traffic safety improvement project. So I believe he already has an amendment forward for that project. If agreed upon, you can add Tyler Avenue to that.
Okay, yeah, would that work?
Text change.
Is that Amendment 32, the Complete Street Supplemental Funding?
I don't believe so, but I can work with you after this and find a solution forward.
Okay, I really appreciate that.
You. All right, next.
The last amendment for the budget ordinance before we get into fees and fines is number 63. This amendment adds $7,500 to the Department of Recreation and Parks Division for a sign at Annapolis Street Park using the reserve for one-time uses.
Okay, thank you.
The only fee amendment that we have is shown on the screen. And what it is doing is it is striking the 1%. So this is code reference 2156040, certificate of approval after the fact public hearing application, striking 1% of estimated cost, minimum $50, maximum $2,000, and changing that to 1.5% estimated cost, minimum $350, maximum $5,000. And I will defer any other questions on this to Director Jakubiak.
Any questions? Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
You do have questions? Sorry.
Director
Jakubiak will probably have to come up for this. Thank you.
No, it was actually in regards to 63. I was just trying to get clarification on, is this one sign for $7,500?
Alderman O'Neill, that's
It's
your
actually a
amendment.
sign and a bench. I was just getting ready to send Budget Manager Trudeau just an amendment that it's sign and a bench. The initial staff report said that the total cost for a new street end park would be $14,000. But I've been told that the sign and the bench portion are under $7,500.
We'll modify that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Arnett.
Yes, on fees, I want to make sure we keep a placeholder. We don't have fees yet for the outdoor dining. I think that's coming next week, but there will be one other.
Yeah, we have a placeholder in the budget. My plan was to do that similar as the one you see for watershed restoration, putting that all in one amendment so we see the true impact. Amendment number 1 for fines. This impacts code reference 1404050B. This is in relation to the snow removal. So I'll let you guys absorb this and before I move on. And we'll ask if you have
Any questions on
specific
that, guys?
questions. I'll ask DPW to come up.
Okay, Alderman Huntley.
Yeah, I do have some questions on this. So this, I believe, is in reference to my legislation to allow us to charge the cost of clearing a sidewalk after the fine. And this doesn't seem to do that. The intention of the legislation is to, if you don't clear your walk, you get a fine. If you still don't clear your walk, DPW can come out, clear it, and charge you for it. And that's not what's happening in here. We're just increasing those fines. So, so I'm confused why we would do that.
Marcia, can you?
Marcia Patrick, Assistant Director of Public Works. So those fines would cover the costs, but it's not a direct link of billing the resident. So possibly we could use a budget transfer method to get the money back into our budget, because I think that would cover the cost.
Yeah, I understand it might cover the cost. It's just not what the legislation is supposed to do. The point is to make it variable, so that somebody who has a big old mansion and a lot more sidewalk is paying more than somebody who has, a row home. And really to tie so I think we just need to maybe do some work on this to make sure it's aligned with the legislation.
I agree. Thank you.
You want to add Alderman Savage and Alderman Huntley to that legislation, please?
So it seems to me that the cost should be covered under a fee, and the fine is a penalty. But also I want to add, it seems like one of the biggest perpetrators of not clearing is the county on county roads. And so I'm wondering if we're going to be fining the county and charging them fees for not clearing on their roads.
That'll work. Alderman Huntley, you can finish up, then Alderman Savage.
Yeah, just I want to ask the city attorney, would it be possible to add, so if we are sticking with something like this where we have a single family residential, a commercial, a multifamily residential, could we add a commercial governmental fine? I guess, so in a situation like Alderman Arnett is discussing, where say the school doesn't clear their sidewalk, that's not covered under commercial. I wouldn't call a school commercial. What would it be possible for us to charge a fine to the county if they don't clear their sidewalks the way they're supposed to?
Anything other than residential would be considered commercial. But we probably wouldn't go after the county. It's not something we do.
Right, but I'm asking you, can we? Is there something that makes it illegal? If the county violates our law just like a citizen does?
You can do it, but I'd need 3 more attorneys to do it.
And we got a pretty clear message from the county. They don't do sidewalks.
Seems like that's why we should do
Alderman
it.
Savage works for the county. Any answers on that?
I don't wear that hat right now. But so, well, on the county thing, yeah, I mean, because it would, I don't think this would apply because it's their infrastructure, their sidewalks. Even if it's surrounded by city property, it's in their road right of way. It's their infrastructure. We can't fine for them. I don't see an instance. The only instance might be like Arundel Center where it's county building, but it's on city property on city street. And then, yeah, but they're going to clear that anyway because the public's trying to get in and out of that building. So I think it's kind of a moot point. But as far as the recovery process for staff time resources is not a fine. That is completely separate. It's not even a fee. It's something completely separate from those two processes, if I'm not mistaken. And so, but to the director's point, the fine would recover those costs. So I don't think there would have to be anything separately done. Third point, as far as, this is a question for the law office, but I know for some of the fines we can issue, they're considered kind of maximums. And sometimes I believe the inspectors have flexibility as far as if they want to issue $100, $200, whatever. Is that correct? Or is it
No,
always
they don't have flexibility. It's whatever's put in the fine schedule. That's what they charge. They can charge first offense, as you identified in the schedule. They can charge second offense up to a maximum. That's all provided by council edict in the schedule.
So if we could say, though, up to a maximum of $1,000 per day, and then that would give some flexibility. Is that legally sufficient?
Well, you could say up to a maximum, but usually if the snow isn't removed in the day, the way the code is written, they have until the next day. So they're getting fined per day.
And I'm just saying in general, like if we wanted to have flexibility, we could put up to maximum of $1,000 fine.
Sure. The council could do that. Council could vote on that.
Okay. Well, and there might be other ways to address that, Alderman. Yeah, thanks.
Alderman Gay?
Just this obviously defines this has to be enforced. So somebody would have to call and alert the city or whatever, and then we don't operate outside of after 4. And so curious how that worked. And secondly, if I forget, Marcy, I forget your title, my apologies. If you wouldn't mind explaining to me, how do you calculate staff time when they, in a situation where, for example, they would have to, clear sidewalks and say like a Watergate or something like that?
Thank you, Deputy Director.
Deputy Director, sorry, my apologies.
I suspect we would hire a contractor to do that work. I don't think it would be our own crews. And that would be, we would have to possibly put out a procurement or figure that out. I mean, I can't tell you offhand what it would cost because it depends on the size of the property, et cetera. But I would suspect that those fines would cover that. But again, a fine and then charging a homeowner are two different things. So I suppose it's up to your intent of what you want, how it should be handled.
No, I appreciate that. I was under the impression of the city staff, it would be contracted out. So thanks for the clarification there.
Thank you. Right.
Sorry, just one last thing on this. The legislation as introduced does say that a fee will be imposed, not a fine, to Alderman Arnett's point. So we may, at minimum, may need to swap this over into the fee category.
We will work with the department to get this figured out. Amendment number 2 strikes. So this is code reference 175110. Strikes the unapproved full or partial demolition of a structure. $5,000 per day for the initial offense, $10,000 per day for the continuous violation. I'll defer any questions to Director Jakubiak.
Absolutely. Director Jakubiak, you want to come up? Alderman Savage?
Yeah, just a question for Office of Law on this. It takes advantage of, I think, the state legislation that was passed this year to increase our maximum fines to $5,000. The current max is $1,000, I think. Is there anything else we need to do in the code to authorize those higher fines, or is this sufficient just to adjusting the fine, the fine schedule?
Just adjusting the fine schedule is all that's needed.
Okay. Okay. I know, I'm not sure we took that into full consideration when creating the fine schedule. I'm sure I know there are a number of other fines that we may want to increase. One in particular I know is erosion sediment control for, pollution into our waterways. I'm sure there are others. So I know we're past our goal for introducing amendments, but is there anything else underway as far as updating our entire fine schedule to account for that new maximum? Because that would have a budget impact, right? Presumably your estimates would need to be increased if we are allowing for more fines. So I think there is an interest for us to do that comprehensively. But we could do it after the budget, but that's not necessarily going to help us with the short-term challenges we have. So I don't know.
You had plenty.
It's a pretty substantial increase, Director.
Yeah, this is actually the only amendment here is the part that's being stricken. The other text is what's in the mayor's budget. And the only reason this is being stricken is it's because it's a typo. It's actually reflected in under the proper code reference earlier in this set of fine changes. So this is just a housekeeping amendment.
Oh, so it's already this.
It's already in there, and that's the fee is in fact would be $5,000 if a structure was demolished without getting a demolition permit first. And by the way, to answer the Alderman's question, in the coming year, we're going to revamp our whole set of enforcement and violations and bring them to the council for your consideration to improve the way that our codes are enforced and to align them better. We don't want to fine. We'd like to deter efforts to get around the code. And we know that the code needs to be improved a little bit to help that deterrence and also better communicate what our expectations are to applicants. So that's something we're working on internally.
Thank you. Anybody else? Next, thank you.
Amendment number 3, just code reference 712-100C, public consumption and possession. It strikes the or imprisonment for not to exceed 90 days or both. Amendment number 4 does the same thing, but it changes the fine for initial offense from $500 to $100.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So with both of these, if you have an open container, now they'll just give you the $100 fine.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm assuming obviously that changes just based off circumstance, parades, etc.
I'll defer to Alderman Huntley.
Alderman Gay, I brought forward this amendment because I spoke with a gentleman who was telling, he was an attorney, and was telling me about someone who he represented pro bono who received a $250 ticket for walking from one house to the next house with a open hard seltzer. And I thought that didn't sound at all fair. And so I went in and looked at the code, and I thought it very much didn't seem fair that people could get thrown in jail for that. So we split this up into 2 amendments because Alderman Finlayson was 100%, as I remember, behind removing the jail time, but we differed on if we should decrease the fine. So does that answer your question?
It does. I just want to be, I have concern like you with in regards to the enforcement, which is obviously at the discretion of an individual officer. And so will you be addressing that later? And particularly because in your ward and in Ward 8, and sometimes in 3, obviously there are a lot of festivals, a lot of events going on in scenarios in which individuals have open containers. I think of tug of war, I think of St. Patrick's Day parade, and so why not? I mean,
I
I
think
don't know.
what you're
Should it be eliminated in its entirety? I don't know.
I think what you're describing might require an ordinance change, and I'd be happy to work with you on it. But this is what I felt like I could do in the budget to move towards making our system a little more fair.
I respect that. Thank you.
Alderman Ned.
I think the Alderman Gay is correct, but I'm operating under the principle: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In Ward 8, and we do have a lot of things. We have one coming up, East Porter Rocking. We had the Green Beer races, and I'm not getting a lot of complaints, and I don't think there's a lot of enforcement problems. But so I subscribe to Alderman Huntley's amendment. Let's bring it back down into a more reasonable realm.
Could I be also added as a co-sponsor of both? Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Our last amendment is adding an off-street parking at expired meter fine. So this is $25 off-street parking violation plus the $5.25 processing fee and a cost of hourly parking session for both the initial offense and continuous violation.
Alderman Savage.
Can you get an explanation for this? How's it different than parking at an expired meter?
We were trying to differentiate between the off-street, the garage issue, and a parking meter out on the street.
Okay, well, everything's treated the same right now. I know that's causing problems, but presumably our budget's built off of that. So this is essentially reducing the parking fine from $50 to $25 for off-street parking spots. So how's it going to impact our parking fund and the waterfall? And well, I guess not the waterfall because it's not impacting the garage, but how's it going to impact our parking fund?
Well, so the fine itself will be a net revenue. So the difference in the fine, the $25, will be made up by adding that portion that's the hourly session, where right now that's not how it's captured. It's just fined at the flat $50. So the average person is in the garage 4 hours. So with the rates, that should make up the difference. The only question becomes if our current service provider for one of our garages is able to charge in this sort of format with their current system, and we don't have the ability to tell them what to do in terms of changing their systems. So I don't know if somebody else from
but the parking manager had done some analysis looking at potential effects. Marcus, I was wondering if you could speak to some of those issues.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Marcus Moore, Director of Transportation. Yeah, what we're looking at here is that Code 12.24130, which definitely addressed expired meter in the street. So we're looking at what's going on in the garages itself. So why didn't we? This code has been there for a long time. So why hasn't it been applied before we had gates? No one's going to get out without paying or actually knocking down the gates, whatever the case may be. What we're looking at is the amount of time people are actually spending within our garage. And the average is right around the 4 hours. So we do have that fraction of the public that intended to pay but didn't find the way to pay. But there is a cost to actually recoup the money when you have to go through the mail out and all. So that's what you see there for the administrative cost of $5.25. And I think that was it, what we're trying to do. It's not just with one garage. I want to make sure that's clear. It's not Hillman against everything else. This code is across all 4 of our city-owned garages. But our statistics are, numbers have shown that the average person or the average amount of stay is just a little over 4 hours in our garages. So we shouldn't really see any real decrease in the amount of money coming in because of this.
Again, I guess we could debate this later, but I don't think this is the appropriate way to go about it. I have legislation should be ready quite soon to actually change the code. I think we need to change it in the code because this still conflates. It's just off-street parking violation, but we already have in the code that the garages are supposed to be used on an hourly basis, charged on an hourly basis per the hourly fee. You know, I'm just not clear. So I guess this would say if they, regardless of the hourly fee, what's considered the violation here? Is it parking beyond the maximum and not paying? Or is it not paying at all for their stay?
Well, that money will come back, Alderman. That we're seeing here, the 525, but in the garages, it escalates past 4 hours. You're actually paying for the whole day. So you have the escalation of the 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and greater than 4 to the maximum of what the the full day rate is. So the 525 has been incurred by the city pretty much. So this want to pass on and redefine what our fee schedule actually is for non-metered, well, garage parking, off-street parking.
I'm still not clear.
And the other thing is that this particular fine, the way it's written, is additive. So it's not replacing the $50 parking at an expired meter. I think the attempt, and Alderwoman O'Neill, correct me if I'm wrong, is to clarify a different standard if what you're talking about is off-street parking. So to differentiate, because prior, as Director Moore had pointed out, when there were gates, you weren't getting out without dealing with that anyway. This then specifically calls out what's the expectation now that those garages are gateless.
Correct.
But that's already, we've dealt with this ad nauseum in the transportation committee. Yes, they're gateless, but they're still operate off of cameras, and so they theoretically can still charge based on your actual usage. And if you don't, so I don't exactly understand what this is trying to do, because we have
Mr. Mayor, can I respond?
Yeah, I think it's your lead on that, Alderman O'Neill, please. Just trying to make it less
Thank you.
painful, right?
Yes. Right now, and as you know, Alderman Savage, we have been talking about this ad nauseum for 2 years and really haven't gotten anywhere. And in talking with at least one of the parking contractors and other people that are involved with parking, this is a way to not make the fine a penalty if you did intend to pay, or if you thought you paid or whatever. It basically charges you for the amount of time, and it has the $25 fee. More than anything, this is a placeholder until we can get the parking contractor for Hillman to come to the table and talk with us about exactly what we've asked for and where we can go from there. But in the meantime, this takes away as a penalty if somebody actually intended to pay. There's still the $50 fine if they go and park at a meter or park in the garage and never ever attempt to start a parking event, is what they're called, the parking contractors call it. So if you have made no indication of putting together, going onto the app and signing up your particular license or anything like that, you'll get the $50 fee. But if you've done that and you have the wrong license plate because you have 4 cars, or you have, misput in your credit card, or, whatever the case may be that you may have made a mistake on, you're not being penalized by that $50 fee because you did intend to park. So it's supposed to make it easier. The $50 fine, I think, and everybody that I've spoken with, is really predatory, and we're trying to make it so that it is more fair. If you intend to park, you've attempted to park, you're now paying for parking and the administrative fee.
Okay.
I mean, it still just doesn't logically makes sense to me. The description is off-street parking at expired meter. There is no expired meter in a garage situation.
Perhaps
don't-
the writing needs, the text needs to be changed
Yeah, if you
to
could
not
just-
say expired meter.
You just look at this. I don't understand that, but I also, the whole point was this was going to be an potential impact to the contract, right? I don't know. I feel like I don't know if this does what we were trying to do. I think we both want to get to the same goal, but I don't quite understand this.
All right. Well, we were nearly finished. I know there's other people that want to speak, but we're at 12 minutes past. So, of course, it's parking that's holding us up. Alderman Gay?
Thank you, and I'm going to be very quick because I'm at the time. So it'll be $30.25 as the base because it's the $5 25% processing fee plus the $25 fine, and then 4 hours of parking time on top of that.
No, Alderman, the actual time parked.
So, but how? Okay, because the garage tracks when you come in and out, you can then calculate the time of it.
Yes.
All right, I will. I don't know. It seems a little predatory, and I know how people felt about the $50 fine, and so this it will be way more than $50. You're shaking your head, Alderwoman O'Neill. No, please explain to me because I'm thinking of it again in like, okay, you pay the $30 base fee, and then whatever the time parked is, it'll be more than $20, right?
No, if I park for 2 hours, then I would pay the $6.75 plus the $25 and the fee.
Not 50.
If I haven't already started a parking event, if I don't have my license plates registered, or if I've gone in with the wrong car, it allows for people to make human mistakes, is basically what it's allowing for. And like, as I said, it's a placeholder until we can decide exactly how we're proceeding with the $50 fine.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. I was confused on the hourly rate for and does this? I guess it just depends based off of your God's Hillman or whatever.
Correct. So whatever you've parked, and if it's 2 hours, they're saying that the average parking time is 4 hours. So if it is 4 hours and you haven't paid, then it will get up to that $50, and that's where Director Moran said that it becomes cost neutral.
You can have me as a co-sponsor on this as well. I appreciate that.
Yeah, if I can make one more clarity, Alderman Gay, because one of the things you're looking at with Hillman and the other three garages from a prepaid to a postpaid system. And like Alderwoman O'Neill made mention, I went in for dinner and I calculated my time. I thought I would be there for 3 hours. I'm there for 4 hours. I've already paid for the 3 hours. I go out, I'm going to get a $50 ticket plus the time I already paid. So the street will still remain there as the 1224.130 says, expired meter, but we'll have a placeholder for right now for what we want to do with the garages. Obviously, the best case scenario is a postpaid system. You register as you come in, and you know exactly to the next hour up how much you're going to pay. 3 hours and 15 minutes, you're going to pay for the 4 hours. That way up to the next hour, but not a $50 fine there. So what we're trying to do is break that in half to the $25 plus the time you've already paid.
Alderman Savage.
Well, I mean, I think Alderman Gay is right, though. It's still a lot. If you look at our Hillman Garage daily rate in the code, in our adopted fee schedule, it's $6 for up to 2 hours. So this would mean you get fined $25, then you add in the $6, so you're at $31. Then you add the $5.25 charge, you're up to over $35. So sure, $35 is better than $50, but it's a hell of a lot more than your $6 you should have been charged for those 2 hours. So it's really not that much of an improvement at all for the residents. So I just
all right. Okay. Anything else?
Yes.
Alderman Arnett, of course.
Yes, 2 sentences. One, I think that I have a great deal of sympathy for most of the proposals, but they seem to fall heavily on transportation, public works, and planning and zoning. And I would encourage the sponsors of many of these proposals to work with the department heads to find out what ones can be done in this fiscal year and have some priority so that when we actually get to the budget, we can cut back to at least the amount of money we have and hopefully less than that.
Right. Alderman Savage.
Well, since we're at the end, I do think we need to talk about two things. One, or at least I want to bring up two things. One is we had all the public comment, public testimony about requests to improve our recreational fields. You know, I didn't see any amendments to address that. They are, but my understanding is some of the fields are ours, and we are responsible for maintenance or use. Some of them are county owned, but my understanding is we are responsible for maintenance. Regardless of who it is, what's the plan to address that? And do we need a budget amendment to get some of those fields improved? I just feel like we need to respond to the public's concerns some way. I mean, maybe we could do it Monday at the.
On Monday, I think
Okay.
some ideas are going to come forward for the council.
Okay. And the other last thing is just we have to keep in mind we're being told we have 1.4 million one-time use, right? But we've identified 1.9 million, almost 2 million of one-time use. So again, I'm still not entirely clear on the difference between that 4.5 million and 1.4 million, but maybe you can explain to me later. And if I see it, it helps me understand it. But if that's the case, and you're recommending we stay under, are there implications? What are the implications if we stick to the proposed 2 million? Because if we have to, or I know it's a recommendation, if we decide we want to or need to get down to that 1.429 million, we have a lot of tough decisions to make on these amendments, right? It's going to make it a lot more contentious than it would have been otherwise. Typically, we have a decent amount of one-time use that we can use, and we don't have to worry about that. But we're going to have to, if this is the case, we're going to have to worry about which ones we want to reduce or not fund. So that's going to take up a lot more time than it has in the past because we've never had to do that for one-time use money. That's going to make for a very long day coming up at the for the final end night. See if we can do 2 a.m. like the one year. Just bringing that up.
Maybe we can all consider some things we can cut back on.
So I think
before.
that's why I'm really asking you strongly about that 1.4 versus 4.5. I'm trying to understand the reduction a lot better because the implications are significant as far as the amount of how contentious this is going to be versus what it's typically like. I mean, at least the past few years, it's been very relaxed, but we've had very contentious years in the past.
More than happy to sit down with you and break it down, the better.
And I think that with some one-on-one time would be great if you could actually give us some ideas or actually if we fully funded, what that would mean in terms of what we would have to do. Alderman Gay had his hand up first and Alderman Huntley, and it is 5:20.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Savage, if you just cut 2 of your studies, we might be good. And I kid with you as I typically have the most amendments. I'm proud of myself this year for, staying low. But my only question, just in follow-up, what happened with the money that we were supposed to be getting from the parking garage, the $25 million? What's going on with that?
City manager, it's committed to the city dock, which is what it was funded for.
Yeah, the initial funding that was provided as part of the agreement about Hillman is part of the city dock funding, and the waterfall payments also go to that same purpose.
So there are no funding surplus. I was under the impression that there would be funding surplus that could be used to supplement things like the one-time fund. That was the whole plan. They were big ideas.
The so
There's
the life,
not even a little bit coming from the
amount of payments we've gotten from the waterfall to date have exceeded the initial projections that the city had received. The lifetime agreement around the Hillman Garage and the waterfall payments is 30 years, which is longer than the lifespan of the city dock project itself. And so I think, obviously, it wasn't here at the time that those discussions were had and that agreement was reached. But my assumption would be that the discussion about having funds that could be used potentially in other ways was envisioned for after the city dock project was done and the initial purpose of the initial agreement around the use of those funds was fulfilled. I could be wrong about that, but that would be my assumption.
Just to clarify, we do receive, and we have in the proposed budget, $1 million, which is net revenue or net expenses, the revenue that we're receiving from the Hillman Garage. And that goes into the transportation fund.
Would you mind, if possible, offline sending me where I could see that in the budget book or in the open like on the online budget book? Or thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Huntley, for the last one.
I'll pass. I'll talk with our budget staff after.
All right. Well, we did not too bad considering how many amendments. Anything?
Just one last comment. We made some changes today, which we will implement. If there are any further changes, we've agreed on not changing substantially, but if you want to change the funding source, we ask that you please have that to us by close of business on Monday. The reason we ask for close of business on Monday, we have to do 2 levels of internal review first, and then we are going to try and get all of them to you so you can see how things have changed prior to the second.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the directors and for all of you being here. Appreciate you being available. Going to set you free. Anything else for good order, guys? All right. Well, thank you. Nice work, everybody. Meeting adjourned.